Inspired by Naruto, Legacy of the Whirlpool. The Whirlpool Nation is a formidable power with an elite shinobi village. 5 years after the Ninetales incident, Naruto's family brings him to his new homeland. Witness the rise of Naruto Uzumaki as he takes command of the strongest nation and surpasses even the legendary Sage of Six Paths. Just a short distance from the Hidden Leaf Village, an immense force of armored samurai marched down the main trail without caution or fear. Overhead, within the dense treetops, a flurry of ninja cloaked in crimson whirlpools moved swiftly, each equipped for war. They bore the insignia of the Whirlpool realm and answered to the founders of both their land and village, the mighty Uzumaki clan. Their power rivaled that of the five great nations. Closely related to the Hyuga, Senju, and Uchiha clans, their lineage traces back to their progenitor, Murugan, descendant of Hamura Otsutsuki and nephew to the Sage of Six Paths. The samurai were clad in armor etched with powerful Uzumaki sealing scripts, rendering most ninjutsu ineffective. The ninja were part of a covert operations force known as the Kurikishi, elite members of Uzushio's ANBU. In the heart of the procession rode a grand carriage bearing Toshio Uzumaki, sovereign of the Whirlpool Nation and its former second shadow. Though well into his 60s, the vitality of his bloodline left him looking far younger. His beard was deep red, his hair a mixture of silver and crimson, and his eyes sharp and navy blue. Walking beside the carriage was a tall warrior in his late 20s, clad in a long black jacket reinforced with crimson pauldrons and arm guards. A massive blade, nearly 150 cm in length, rested on his back. His fiery red hair cascaded to the middle of his back, and his piercing blue eyes reflected a quiet fury. This was Hissen Uzumaki, Toshio's eldest son, known across the lands as the Sky Deity and the fourth shadow of Uzushio, also the present leader of the Uzumaki clan. His weapon, the Night Raven, forged by their ancestor Murugan, had a midnight black hilt threaded with glowing gold X patterns. Father and son wore hardened expressions of anger. After a moment, Toshio turned to his son. "Hissen, take a detachment and notify the border guards of our arrival." Hissen nodded and vanished with several shadows trailing behind. Toshio glanced toward a second carriage behind his own. Within it sat a woman in her early 30s with cascading red hair, striking blue eyes, and pale, flawless skin. Her kimono was ocean blue, patterned with darker wave motifs. Her steely gaze was fixed on the hidden leaf, with only one name resonating in her mind: Naruto. Within the village of Konoha, few sensed the storm on the horizon. It had been 3 years since the attack by the nine-tailed beast, which ended with the death of Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, who sealed the monster into his newborn child, Naruto. Kushina Uzumaki, his wife and Naruto's mother, perished shortly after. Naruto, thought Hiruzen Sarutobi, reinstated as the third Hokage, staring solemnly out his window. He lamented not taking on the burden of the sealing himself. As rumors spread about the demon's host, fear and resentment surged. Many wanted the boy dead. Others, particularly militarists, aimed to weaponize him. Hiruzen had tried to safeguard Naruto's future out of loyalty to Minato, recognizing that the child was not the demon. But juggling his Hokage duties and fending off pressure from the civilian council, Fugaku Uchiha, and the elders made it difficult. Suddenly, an ANBU in a feline mask appeared before his desk. Her long violet hair spilled from beneath the mask. "Hokage-sama, urgent report from the northern perimeter." Straightening in his chair, Hiruzen's tone hardened. "What's happened?" 3 squads of Uzushio ANBU have arrived at the gates, led by Uzukage Hissen Uzumaki. They're demanding a meeting. Hiruzen's face drained of color. He had once met Hissen during the Third Great War. Konoha and Uzushio had collaborated against an Iwa invasion through the Land of Fire's rear, an unexpected and dangerous maneuver. Everyone had braced for a brutal clash, but Hissen eliminated the enemy force single-handedly. Born with 3 innate chakra natures, water, wind, and lightning, Hissen was a rare prodigy. His water release mastery rivaled even Tabarama Senju's, able to draw moisture straight from the air. His control over all 3 elements earned him the title of Sky Deity. He had become Uzukage before Minato's tenure, and even bested the Yellow Flash in a friendly duel, an event Hiruzen had personally witnessed. But why arrive now? The Whirlpool Nation had severed all diplomatic ties with Konoha after Kushina's death. Could they be here to claim Naruto? With Hissen as leader and Kushina gone, Naruto would be heir to both the Uzukage's title and the daimyo's seat. That would undoubtedly cause internal strife. Danzo and others would want the boy to remain, using his lineage and status to sway the public and retain the Nine Tails. And with Minato's legacy still cherished, the people might rally behind his son. For now, Hiruzen had more immediate matters. He turned back to the ANBU. Any of our forces stationed at the gates? Yes, sir. Tenzo is present and attempting to maintain order between our sentries and the Uzu squads. Good. Assemble a team and escort them to me immediately. The masked operative vanished as Hiruzen leaned back, heavy with thought. Then he said, "Dog." From the shadows appeared another ANBU, silver-haired and stoic behind his canine mask. Yes, Hokage-sama, I want you to locate Naruto Uzumaki and bring him to my clan's estate. Immediately. Understood. And with that, Dog vanished. Hiruzen sighed, rubbing his temples. I'm too old for this nonsense. Meanwhile, with Kakashi Hatake codename Dog, after departing the Hokage Tower, Kakashi leapt across rooftops, scanning for the boy. His first stop was the orphanage, but he knew chances were slim. He'd heard how the caretaker frequently tossed Naruto into the streets. He created a shadow clone to search there while continuing his own sweep. Crowds were often a good clue. Naruto's presence usually stirred hostility among villagers, often leading to mobs. Kakashi scanned for unrest, when several swift shadows darted past him, so fast even his Sharingan barely caught their trail. He gave chase. After a minute, he lost sight of them, only to hear the clang of steel followed by brief, horrifying screams. He halted, turning toward the alley where the sounds had emerged. Again the shadows emerged, heading for the Hokage's mansion. This time, he noticed two were carrying children. One was a boy with wild blonde hair and tan skin. The other was a girl, pale with blue Heim-cut hair. Kakashi's eye widened in recognition. Damn it, he muttered, giving chase. Hokage Tower Council Chamber. It didn't take long for Hiruzen to dispatch messengers calling the council, comprising both shinobi, civilians, and elders, for an urgent gathering. The summons explicitly stated that punctuality was mandatory. Ordinarily, the Hokage tolerated slight delays, provided there were no distractions or excuses. But when Hiruzen declared there was zero tolerance for lateness, it was clear something major was at hand, prompting everyone to assemble without delay. The sight that met them upon arrival left many stunned. The daimyo of the Whirlpool Nation stood beside a boy and a veiled woman. Surrounding them were several elite Uzu ANBU from the Kurakishi unit, hands calmly behind their backs as they stood sentinel. Like other ANBU across the shinobi world, their features were hidden behind masks, but theirs were matte black with crimson kanji etched into them. They don lightweight ebony armor on their torsos, metal guards on arms and legs, and beneath that, dark navy uniforms complete with hoods and gloves. Short blades were strapped to their backs, primarily ninjato, and the crest of Uzashio marked their sleeves. Each wore a necklace bearing a black disc inscribed with silver swirls, the symbol of the Uzumaki progenitors. The Kurakishi unit were known for their seal-based combat and struck fear into many who had faced them. Their silence as they stood behind the three made even veteran clan leaders uncomfortable. Some murmured questions about why the Fire Daimyo allowed so many foreign agents within his realm, until they spotted the signed writ bearing the Fire Daimyo's approval, granting Tashiyu access for undisclosed reasons. To ease the rising tension in the room, Hiruzen cleared his throat loudly, drawing everyone's focus. Before we begin, I'd like to officially welcome Tashiyu Dono, Hissen Dono, and he gestured politely to the woman seated beside the daimyo. Tashiyu Uzumaki offered the elder Kage a steely look that made even the god of shinobi waver slightly. She is the reason we're here. That, and the fact that we were evidently deceived regarding a particular incident from 3 years past. Confused glances were exchanged throughout the chamber as members tried to recall what had happened 3 years ago. The only significant event was the Nine Tails assault, which claimed numerous lives, including the fourth Hokage. A creeping suspicion began forming in Hiruzen's mind. Had they somehow uncovered the truth about Naruto? Those with sharp perception, such as the clan leaders and senior Jonin, could sense the hostility radiating from the daimyo, his son, and the unknown woman. I'm not certain I understand what you mean. As soon as he said that, 5 more Uzu ANBU materialized across the chamber, kneeling in formation before their leaders. The one at the center, a man by voice with the kanji for ghost, announced, Tashiyu dono, Uzukage dono, Uzumaki-sama, we found him. The ANBU to his left stepped forward, arms cradling what appeared to be a child. That child was Naruto-kun. The veiled woman cried, sprinting toward the boy as her mask slipped away mid-run, revealing her pale skin, azure eyes, and flowing crimson hair. Those who recognized her gasped. It was Kushina Uzumaki, widow of Minato Namikaze, daughter of Tashiyu Uzumaki, and to a few, mother of Naruto Uzumaki. Several clan heads instinctively formed seals, muttering kai to dispel any illusion, but the image held true. Kushina ignored the world around her, collapsing to her knees and clutching her unconscious child tightly, tears of relief cascading down her face. Hiruzen was first to recover his composure when Dog, an ANBU, appeared beside him. Forgive me, Hokage-sama, I couldn't move quickly enough. His voice trailed off as he stared at Kushina, stunned to see his late teacher's wife alive. Seeing the disbelief on his operative's face, Hiruzen gestured for him to stand down. Dog disappeared, and the Hokage turned toward the daimyo with narrowed eyes. Tashiyu dono, why is your daughter, who was officially declared deceased during the Ninetales assault, standing here alive? The only response he received were cold, piercing glares from the Uzumaki group, their ANBU included. The combined killing intent was so potent that many civilians fainted, clan heads visibly flinched, and even the hidden Konoha ANBU lost their breath, making their concealment useless. Naruto stirred slightly, disturbed by the intense chakra pressure, and instinctively buried his face deeper into his mother's embrace. Realizing this, Kushina softened her expression and looked down at him, only to notice the bruises on his cheeks and the ragged state of his clothes. Straightening, voice firm and commanding, she declared, Hiruzen, I'm taking my son to be healed. My father and brother will explain what you need to know. After that, we're bringing him home, his true home. Her tone left no room for negotiation. If necessary, she would fight for her son. Hiruzen nodded silently, not wishing to provoke either the Whirlpool Nation or the Fire Daimyo. But before Kushina could exit, accompanied by a guard detail, Ghost turned to address Hayashi. You must be Hayashi Hyuga. The Hyuga patriarch inclined his head. You should be informed that while Naruto-sama was found being assaulted by a group of villagers, we dealt with them, he added coldly, causing shivers down the spines of many present. We also discovered your daughter, Hinata Hyuga, had suffered a head injury attempting to defend him. What? Hayashi's voice echoed furiously. Though known for his stoic demeanor, the loss of his brother due to the Kumigakure incident months earlier had left him protective of his remaining family. The idea of harm befalling Hinata was intolerable. Turning to Hiruzen, he stated, Hokage-sama, I request permission to inform my wife. Hiruzen nodded, and Hayashi departed, flanked by 2 Hyuga guards. Kushina soon followed, half the Uzu ANBU forming an escort, carrying the sleeping Naruto from the room, leaving Tashiyu and Hissen to speak with the council, which neither minded. Now then, Tashiyu said as he resumed his seat, his son doing the same. As the Hokage asked, you may be wondering how my daughter survived. Nods met his words. I'll explain what I can, though only Kushina remembers it all. She claims that as Minato prepared to seal the Kyuubi, he took their child, Naruto, to perform the jutsu. But several hours later, an unknown medic arrived and told her that her baby had died. A collective gasp echoed, and Hiruzen's face darkened. The shock of losing both her husband and newborn son, combined with her weakened state post-childbirth, broke her spirit. She left the village without hesitation. But that can't be, Hiruzen muttered. When I arrived at the site of the sealing, both Minato and Kushina's bodies were there, along with baby Naruto. Tashiyu narrowed his eyes at the Hokage. Then it's obvious, someone wanted Kushina removed so Naruto would stay behind in this village, he said, his sharp gaze momentarily flicking toward Danzo, only caught by the Hokage and his son. Regardless, that's irrelevant. We are here for Naruto, and once he's stable, we're returning to the Whirlpool Nation. This is not up for debate. Danzo rose this time, irritation etched into his face. That cannot happen. We cannot permit you to remove the boy from the village. One civilian council member, clearly fed up with the discussions surrounding the so-called demon child, stood to speak. Why should we even want him here? No one likes him and everyone knows what he holds. Why not let him go? His voice held barely veiled disdain. Danzo smiled coldly, ready to play his winning card. Need I remind you all, Naruto is the child of Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze. That makes him the son of a Hokage. The civilian members erupted in protest. Meanwhile, the clan leaders simply exhaled, having long suspected as much given Minato and Kushina's relationship. Enough! Hissen thundered, the room trembling slightly under the force of his voice, silencing the chamber. His parentage doesn't change the facts. Naruto is an Uzumaki, heir to our nation's throne. With Kushina Nichin next in line after our father, and me having taken the role of Uzukage, Naruto is the rightful successor. Kushina is his guardian, and has full rights to remove him from this village, unless you intend to provoke war with both Uzushiagakure and the Whirlpool Nation. The silence that followed was thoughtful and tense. Yes, Konoha was strong, founded by the famed Hashirama Senju, but its birth was also made possible by the Uzumaki clan's contributions and funding. The Uzumaki had deep roots, immense sealing prowess, and ties to the Sage of Six Paths. Not to mention, several formidable families were still loyal to their cause. Danzo opened his mouth to cite the Fire Daimyo, only to have Tashiu toss Hiruzen a scroll. It bore the official mark of the daimyo. I've already spoken with the Fire Daimyo. He was horrified to hear of the treatment Naruto endured and the deception surrounding his survival. We've been granted safe passage through his lands and will proceed, unless you intend to challenge his authority too. That declaration effectively ended the debate. Even Danzo wasn't foolish enough to challenge both the Whirlpool military and their own country's leader, despite his displeasure at losing the Kyuubi host. Seeing no one object further, Tashiu continued. Truthfully, this village deserves to fall for how it's treated my kin. But my daughter still holds friends here, people she treasures. For her sake, and for Minato's, I'm willing to reopen trade with Konoha and the Fire Country under specific terms. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. There was still hope. I appreciate that, Hiruzen said. We weren't aware Kushina had survived, but those responsible for hiding the truth will be held accountable. I hope we can rebuild our ties. And I'm grateful Naruto will now have family to raise him properly to make up for our failings. Shall we discuss trade another time? Tashiu and Hissen both nodded. Yes. For now, we'll check on my daughter and grandson at the hospital. Good day. With that, the Uzukage, the daimyo, and their ANBU escort exited, leaving behind a lighter, albeit strained, atmosphere. Konoha Hospital Kushina moved with such speed it would make one think she was using Minato's Flying Thunder God technique. Then again, any mother reunited with her critically injured 3-year-old would likely do the same. Naruto was covered in wounds and malnourished. And let's not forget, it's unwise to anger a mother, especially in Uzumaki, by insulting her child. That's exactly what a receptionist did when Kushina arrived, sneering at Naruto and claiming they don't treat monsters. It took nearly all her escorts to keep Kushina from tearing the woman apart, while Ghost calmly, yet menacingly, secured them a room, and made clear the woman would face consequences from the Whirlpool Nation for her words. After a series of very loud and very painful arguments with hospital staff, some of whom now required treatment themselves, we find ourselves in a hospital room. Kushina Uzumaki sat quietly beside her sleeping son. Kurakishi guards stood watch at every possible entry point. Next door, Hinata Hyuga was recovering from injuries she got while protecting Naruto. 2 Hyuga guards and 1 Uzu Anbu guarded her room. Kushina had insisted on ensuring the girl was safe and planned to meet Hayashi Hyuga later. But for now, her focus was on her boy. Naruto lay peacefully, letting out soft breaths. Now that she could see him clearly, she noticed how much he resembled Minato, from the spiky blonde hair and blue eyes to the tan complexion. He was a miniature version of his father except for the whisker marks. Guilt surged within her. She had left him here alone. She hadn't even pressed the Hokage when told her son had died. She gently stroked Naruto's cheek, wiping away the dried tears from his latest ordeal. The touch made Naruto stir, his face scrunching as he slowly awoke. The first thing he saw was a woman, beautiful, with fair skin, blue eyes, and long red hair. But her expression looked sorrowful as if carrying deep emotional wounds. Naruto immediately recoiled in fear, memories of the recent mob attack flashing back. He thought she might hurt him. Seeing the fear in his eyes, Kushina's heart ached. She leaned forward slowly, her voice soft and soothing. "It's okay, Naruto-kun. I won't hurt you," she whispered, arms outstretched to comfort him. Her voice was warm, gentle in a way that made Naruto want to believe her. But years of pain and cruelty left him unsure. He mumbled, "Why you won't hurt me?" Kushina gently shook her head. "Never, I'd never harm you, Naruto-kun. You're everything to me, my Soichi." That word Soichi made Naruto freeze. Did she just call him her son? Was this woman? "Mommy," he whispered, voice trembling with fear and hope. Kushina could only nod, her face glowing with a joyful smile and tears slipping down her cheeks as Naruto finally wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her chest and releasing his own happy sobs. She held him tightly in return. The room fell into a calm silence, broken only by the sounds of a mother and son's shared weeping as they were finally together again. As they clung to each other, Kushina kept whispering through her tears, "I'm sorry, Soichi, I'm so sorry for leaving you. I never wanted this." The genuine regret in her voice convinced Naruto that she had never meant to abandon him, and his crying grew louder as he clutched at her kimono. They remained that way for several more minutes, wrapped in the kind of joy that not even the greatest writer could fully capture. After the tears had subsided, Naruto, still held tightly in his mother's arms, looked up at her hesitantly. Are you really staying with me now?" he asked in a quiet voice. Kushina nodded warmly, planting a kiss on her son's head. "Yes, I'm here for good. I'm taking you home with me so you can meet the rest of our family. Won't that be wonderful?" Naruto gave a slow nod, half listening and half just savoring the comfort of being held. A family, something he had always dreamed of. People who loved him, who would never leave him behind. And now, he had a mother who loved him more than anything. He was overjoyed. They didn't know how long they stayed in each other's arms until they heard the door creak open. Entering the room were Tashiyu and Hissen. The daimyo smiled warmly at the heartwarming scene, though he felt a bit guilty about disturbing their moment. Still, he spoke softly. "It's good to see you awake, Naruto-kun," he said gently as he and Hissen approached. Feeling suddenly shy, Naruto pressed himself deeper into his mother's embrace, unsure of who these strangers were. Noticing his unease, Kushina gave her son a gentle smile. "Soichi," she said softly to get his attention, "these two are your grandfather and uncle. Don't you want to say hello?" Naruto looked at her, then back at the unfamiliar men. He stared at Tashiyu, who was closer, and whispered, "Jiji." Toshiyu's smile grew as he nodded. "Yes, Naruto-kun, I'm Tashiyu Uzumaki. It's so good to finally meet you." Before he could say more, Naruto wriggled out of his mother's arms and hugged him tightly. Sniffling into the folds of his kimono, Naruto whispered, "Tashiyu Jiji," and held on tightly while Tashiyu softly patted his back. Hissen ruffled the boy's spiky hair with a grin. Naruto beamed, surrounded by the family he never had, until something rising from the floor startled him. He let out a yelp, and the adults turned sharply. Before them stood a man of average build, draped in a black cloak, hood drawn over his face. Though his features were mostly hidden, his green skin stood out. Removing his hood, he revealed crimson eyes, then dropped to one knee before the family. "Tashiyu-sama, forgive the interruption, but I bring important news regarding the council and Konoha," the man said flatly. Tashiyu turned to Naruto, who was still being comforted by Kushina. "Don't worry, Naruto-kun. This man is an old friend of our clan. His name is Yujin, and he was the one who discovered that you were still alive," he said, trying to reassure the boy. It was true, Yujin had served the Uzumaki clan since its earliest days. Created by the Sage of Six Paths, Zayden, Yujin continued his service under Rikishi Uzumaki after his creator's death. With his ability to manipulate his molecular structure, Yujin had long been a spy, assassin, and scout for the clan and nation. By replacing his internal organs with new material, he remained functional and unaging. Naruto looked from his grandfather to Yujin, then up at his mother. She nodded reassuringly. Naruto turned back and gave a small wave. Yujin bowed in response. "It is an honor to meet you, Naruto-sama. Now, if I may, I have critical intelligence from the council's recent discussions, and other findings as well." Tashiyu nodded. After Kushina gently reassured Naruto that she would be just outside, the three elder Uzumaki and Yujin exited to talk privately. Once they were far enough not to be overheard, Yujin began his report. "First, the council has accepted Tashiyu-sama's terms." He unfurled a scroll. "They have dismissed the orphanage matron and will bring her to Kushina-sama for questioning." He paused, shivering slightly at the thought. "Additionally, they have agreed to remove your clan's crest from their standard gear, as acknowledgement of breaking ties with Uzashio due to their mistreatment of Naruto-sama." Lastly, since Tsunade-sama and Shizune-san relocated to Whirlpool, all Senju property and funds will be transferred from Konoha's vault to our capital, and the Senju compound will be taken under our care. It was true Tsunade, the last known Senju and granddaughter of Hashirama, left Konoha long ago after personal tragedy. 3 years earlier, Tashiyu had written inviting her to Whirlpool. This gesture had lifted her from despair and addiction. Since then, she served as a personal healer to the family and helped establish the nation's medical program. Still officially registered as a Konoha shinobi, she couldn't formally join Uzu. Currently, Shizune, and Amai Uzumaki, Tashiyu's wife, and mother to Kushina and Hissen, were staying at the Fire Daimyo's residence. Despite poor health, Amai insisted on seeing her grandson, vowing to raise Konoha if needed. Indeed, a mother's rage is strong, but a grandmother's is terrifying, especially upon learning how her grandson had suffered. What of the seals on Konoha's walls? Were they willing to let us dismantle them, since they originated from our clan? Hissen asked. That was the point they resisted most, Yujin replied. They would prefer a compromise rather than outright removal, citing defense concerns. Tashiyu stroked his chin, looking between his children. Perhaps we can modify them into detection barriers instead of repelling ones. Kushina agreed, while Hissen shrugged. As long as it shows how much they failed us, I don't care. Suddenly, an Uzu Anbu appeared. Apologies for interrupting, but Naruto-sama is asking for you, Kushina-sama. He's afraid you've forgotten him. Kushina nodded and started back toward her son's room. Before entering, she looked back at Yujin. Were you able to find those people I asked about? Yujin gave a respectful nod. Yes, Kushina-sama. I've located Mikoto Uchiha, Tuchai and Ai Mikaraku, your former teammate Hitomi Hyuga, your friend Mebuki Haruno, and your students Yugao Yuzuki, Anko Mitarashi, and Kurenai Yuhai. Most have already heard of your return, except possibly Yugao, Mikoto, and Hitomi due to their husbands. Shall I invite them to visit you? Kushina gave a small nod. Thanks. I'll try to meet with them tomorrow unless they ask for me sooner. With that, she quietly stepped back into the room, where her son was nestled beneath the covers, only the top of his hair peeking out. His eyes darted around the room anxiously, but when they met Kushina's gaze, they relaxed. Mommy, Naruto murmured softly. She smiled gently as she walked over to his side. Did you miss me, Soichi? She asked in a soothing voice. Naruto nodded, reaching out his small hands, which Kushina took before pulling him into her arms. I just wanted to be with you more, Mommy, he whispered, resting against her chest, clearly drained from the day's events. Kushina didn't respond, simply caressing his back while the peaceful silence enveloped them. 1 week later, the days that passed were nothing short of dramatic for the village. After calming her son for what felt like the 1000th time, Kushina turned her attention toward holding those accountable for his mistreatment. The head of the orphanage was her first target, and the injuries inflicted on the elderly woman rendered her nearly incapacitated. A handful of villagers, both shinobi and civilians, who had tormented Naruto would no longer be able to walk straight, if they could walk at all. Then came the shopkeepers, those who either denied Naruto service or gave him spoiled goods at high prices. Their businesses were reduced to ash, and they were found badly beaten, howling in pain during their journey to the hospital. Unsurprisingly, uproar followed. Civilians and a few uninformed ninja demanded action. But the Hokage's hands were tied. Firstly, Kushina was fully justified in retaliating after all her child had endured. Secondly, she held royal status. Imprisoning the heir to the Whirlpool nation could create political fallout. Lastly, no one dared challenge an enraged Uzumaki mother. Shortly after Tashiyu and his family arrived, a public declaration was made about Naruto's heritage. Reactions were mixed. Many villagers were ashamed for dishonoring the fourth Hokage's final wish, and not realizing Naruto's resemblance to him. A smaller, stubborn group tried to deny that the so-called demon brat was their hero's son, but that number shrank rapidly thanks to Kushina's persuasive methods. Of course, Kushina didn't greet everyone with hostility. In fact, she was immediately embraced by her close friends Mikoto, Hitomi, Mebuki, and her 3 former students. Kushina was pleasantly surprised by how far her Kunoichi students had come. Anko and Kurenai were both chunin, Anko nearing special jonin rank through her work in interrogation, and Kurenai set to teach at the academy and serving as Hinata Hyuga's personal guardian. Yugao had already reached jonin and joined the Anbu under Hiruzen. She was also dating Hate Gecko, which Kushina had expected given how often she saw Yugo tending to his cough. Present day, Hokage's office Toshiyu and his son Hisan were finalizing treaty details with Hiruzen. Earlier, the three men had shared a laugh about using shadow clones for paperwork, with Hiruzen repeatedly smacking his forehead, cursing himself for not having realized it sooner. The man once hailed as the god of shinobi had still been defeated by bureaucracy. Now, they were ready to sign the agreement, when a massive explosion echoed from the northern gate. The trio stood up instantly as two masked ANBU, one from Konoha, one from Uzushio, appeared in a burst of speed. Hokage-sama, Toshiyu-sama, Hisan-sama, what's going on? Hiruzen questioned sharply. A woman approached the gate and didn't speak a word, just smashed through the steel doors. She's been tearing through the village ever since. Anyone who tries to stop her gets flattened. Tsunade-sama and Shizune-san were seen accompanying her. At that, Toshiyu let out a groan while Hisan rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Even the Uzushio ANBU chuckled uneasily. Noticing the stares, Toshiyu sighed and muttered, "Looks like Amai-chan ran out of patience and decided to come herself." Hiruzen visibly blanched. He knew all too well the legendary fury of the Uzumaki clan, and Amai Uzumaki was perhaps its fiercest member. When she lost her temper, very few could stand against her. He was now grateful he had finally learned how to handle paperwork efficiently, as he was sure the damage she was about to cause would cost him dearly. "Toshiyu-sama, since this is your wife, would you mind?" He didn't need to finish. Toshiyu, Hisan, and the ANBU had already vanished in a flurry of wind. Konoha Hospital, guess Mom got tired of waiting, Kushina mused as the distant sounds of chaos reached her ears. But her attention remained on her son, who was chatting with a young Hyuga girl doing her best to stay awake. Hinata was still in bed recovering from serious injuries, lacking the Uzumaki or fox-like healing that Naruto had. Her parents, Hayashi and Hitomi, were nearby with baby Hanabi asleep in her mother's arms. Since learning that Hinata had tried to protect him from the mob, Naruto had wanted to thank her personally. Aside from Tsuchai and Aim, who were also preparing to move to Uzushio with Hisan's offer, Hinata was one of the few who had shown Naruto kindness. The ramen vendors, tired of the village's cruelty, were more than happy to leave. Meanwhile, Naruto and Hinata seemed to be getting along well, though Naruto didn't understand why she kept blushing. Once Mom finds out, she's going to start matchmaking, Kushina sighed, knowing her mother's meddling ways when it came to family, and spoiling grandkids like Naruto and Karin. Right on cue, loud voices echoed just beyond the door. Kushina could already recognize them as her mother's and the Hyuga guards. She decided to intercept before things escalated. As she reached the door, her father's voice rang out and the shouting diminished. Then she opened the door to reveal Amai Uzumaki, her mother and Naruto's grandmother. Amai looked like an older version of Kushina, with long, deep crimson hair. Despite a few wrinkles, she appeared far younger than her years. She had striking blue eyes and wore a rich blue kimono adorned with the Uzumaki crest, her ears glittering with matching sapphire earrings. "Kushina, there you are," Amai exclaimed, shifting her gaze from her husband. "I've been searching everywhere for you." Kushina let out a small sigh at her mother's usual high-spirited nature. "Guess I can't really complain," she thought to herself, then glanced at her son, who was still staring at Amai with wide-eyed curiosity. "Soichi, this is your grandma." The moment Naruto heard the word grandma, he bolted toward Amai and threw himself at her with such enthusiasm he nearly knocked her over, if not for their size difference. "Grandma," he squealed, thrilled to meet another relative. Amai beamed as she picked Naruto up to eye level. "So this is my sweet grandson. Those little whisker marks make you absolutely adorable," she cooed before hugging him tightly. Naruto happily wrapped his arms around her neck. The rest of the family looked on warmly, though Kushina soon realized someone was missing. "Hey, Mom, where's Tsunade-sensei?" she asked. Amai blinked and looked around before frowning. "Oh, I must have missed her leaving. I was in such a rush to see Naruto-chan that I didn't notice anything else." Everyone's sweat dropped. "Same as always," Toshiyu thought, glancing at his wife. Then he said, "We've finalized the agreement, and once Tsunade and my men gather the Senju and Uzumaki heirlooms, we'll head out." "Kushina," Hitomi called out, emerging from her daughter's room. Seeing the daimyo and his wife, she squeaked and bowed deeply. "Toshiyu-sama, Amai-sama, it's wonderful to see you again." Amai lit up at the sight of the girl. "Hitomi-chan. My, how you've grown." she said, handing Naruto back to Kushina and embracing the Hyuga matriarch with motherly affection. This put her in view of Hayashi, who sat beside Hinata while holding Hanabi. "Hayashi-kun, is that you?" Amai's family watched as she eagerly entered the room to chat with the Hyuga clan. Kushina and Naruto followed, the latter eager to bond more with his grandmother. That left Toshiyu and Hissen in the hallway. Hissen gave his father a sideways glance. "How long do you think it'll take before Mom starts playing matchmaker with Naruto and Hinata?" Toshiyu rubbed his forehead, sighing at the thought. Knowing her, probably any minute now. As if summoned, they heard a cheerful, "Aren't they just the cutest little couple?" from inside the room, making both men sweat drop. Toshiyu groaned while Hissen turned to walk away. "I'll tell Yujin-san to get the men ready. If we don't leave soon, Mom might start planning a wedding." "Good idea," Toshiyu agreed, though he couldn't help but think maybe her enthusiasm was starting to rub off on him. "Aboard a ship bound for Uzumaki, Naruto-kun, slow down, you'll upset your stomach." Kushina scolded as her son scarfed down every dish in front of him. Around them, the rest of the group, including Tsunade and Shizune, either chatted or chuckled at the interaction between mother and child. It had been 4 days since their departure from Konoha, 3 on foot to the harbor, and 1 aboard the ship toward the Whirlpool Nation. During the journey, Naruto had interacted with the samurai and shinobi escorting them, quickly endearing himself to everyone. Being surrounded by doting family members had a noticeable effect on the 3-year-old. Combined with Naruto's natural cheerfulness, it didn't take long for the crew to grow fond of the young heir. He was also generous and warm-hearted, traits common among the Uzumaki, and insisted on not bothering the ship's attendants. Everyone felt optimistic that he'd grow up into an exceptional young man. One of the most memorable events during the trip was when Naruto first met Tsunade. Initially shy around her, given his past experiences with new people, he eventually built up the courage, encouraged by his mother, to greet her. The first thing out of his mouth was, "My mommy is prettier than you." His innocent comparison came from his view that Kushina was practically divine. Reactions varied. Shizune and Amai giggled, Toshiyu smirked, and Hissen rolled his eyes. Kushina began to scold him, but Tsunade only laughed, saying she once thought the same of her own mother and grandmother. On their way from Konoha to the port, Naruto peppered his family with questions. He wanted to know everything. What Uzumaki looked like, whether there were ninja there, the size of their clan, if they had cool abilities like those in Konoha, and why everyone had red hair, and if he could have it too. Despite the constant chatter, his relatives were happy to answer, knowing he'd eventually need to be taught about shinobi life, leadership, and culture. Back to the current moment. As Kushina tried to rein in her son's voracious eating, a samurai approached Toshiyu, who was seated beside Tsunade. Leaning in, he whispered, "My lord, the guest has regained consciousness." Toshiyu's eyes narrowed, fully aware of whom he meant. He gave a slight nod to Tsunade, who shared a history with the individual in question. Letting the others know they'd return shortly, the two descended below deck. Armed guards and Uzunin lined a corridor, making way for the daimyo and his cousin. They stopped at a sealed cell, runes and chakra-dampening seals covering its perimeter. Inside, sitting up groggily, was a tall man in a red cloak over a green outfit and mesh armor. His long white hair was tied back, a metal forehead protector etched with the kanji for oil resting atop his head. Distinct red lines ran from his eyes to his chin, and a wart marked the side of his nose. It was none other than Jiraiya, the famed Sannin, the legendary Toad Sage, and self-proclaimed master author of adult novels. He was also the late 4th Hokage's mentor and Naruto's godfather. Initially, when Kushina learned that Jiraiya hadn't been involved in Naruto's early life, she wanted to flatten him, something worse than the time Tsunade had caught him peeking at her in the hot springs. But Toshiyu suggested they focus on returning home and settling Naruto in before dealing with old wounds. Hiruzen had promised to reach out to the Sannin eventually. Ironically, Jiraiya had found them first. Flashback 2 days after departing Konoha, Toshiyu asked softly, "Amai-chan, don't you think it would be better to keep moving towards home instead of stopping here?" As the lady gently held her grandson's hand. Their party had paused in Yugakure, the former hidden village of the hot water country, to rest. Not everyone with them was a shinobi, and Amai was determined to make up for the gifts she missed giving Naruto on his first 3 birthdays. She couldn't wait until they got back. "Not a chance," Amai replied with a smile, looking fondly at Naruto, who returned her grin with his own mischievous fox-like smile. There's a festival happening in the village today, and I'm not waiting any longer to make up for those birthdays. Besides, everyone could use a break, and this is the perfect spot. Toshio glanced around and noticed Kushina speaking with Tsunade and Shizune, mentioning something about the hot springs. Some of the others seemed in need of some rest as well. He sighed. All right, but just for a few hours. I don't want any assassins attacking us while we're still in Fire Country, especially Danzo's route. That old man seemed uneasy about us taking Naruto-chan with us. Ami rolled her eyes before looking down at Naruto. Come on, Naruto-chan, let's see what prizes they have here. Naruto beamed. Hi, Ba-chan. Then he called out to his mother, Bye, Mommy, I'm going with Ba-chan. Waving as he, Ami, and several guards stepped into the village. Kushina smiled and waved back before heading off with some of the other women towards the hot springs. Once the women had left, Toshio turned to his son. So, what are your plans, Hissen? He asked. Hissen shrugged. I'll stay with the convoy to make sure no one gets any ideas. What about you? Toshio rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I suppose I'll find a souvenir for my nation symbol collection. Never picked one up from this village before, so might as well while I'm here. With that, he walked off, accompanied by several samurai and ninjas. Meanwhile, Naruto was already 15 minutes into having the time of his life with his grandmother. Back in Konoha, he'd never had a chance to attend any festivals. Villagers would shout or push him away. Now, he was doing so many things at once, you'd think there were 10 of him. He'd played multiple games, won several prizes, had a lollipop halfway eaten in one hand, and wore a funny red top hat perched on his head. Around his neck were 2 handcrafted necklaces bearing the Uzumaki emblem, one for him and one for his mother, crafted by a blacksmith from Takumi Village, the weapon-forging village. But best of all, he was enjoying this with family. Ami was delighted to catch up with her grandson, seeing how long it had been since he'd had this much fun, and happily spent as much as needed for him. As they browsed, something caught Naruto's eye. He let go of his grandmother's hand and moved toward the source of his fascination. A toy stand with large stuffed animals hanging on the wall and lined up on the counter. They were about his size or smaller, but what truly captured his attention was a cute orange fox plush with a fluffy tail. His eyes filled with longing as he stared at the toy. Ami, walking beside him, smiled knowingly. Looking back down, she asked softly, Would you like to have that, Naruto-chan? Naruto nodded shyly, eyes still fixed on the plush. Ami took his hand while he discarded his finished lollipop. Approaching the stand, they were greeted by an elderly woman in a simple brown kimono. Beside her were 2 younger attendants, a teenage boy with short black hair wearing a blue kimono, and a girl with long brown hair dressed in green. The older woman smiled warmly at Ami and Naruto. Hello there, is there something you like? She asked, mostly addressing Naruto. Naruto said nothing, still staring at the fox plush. Ami answered instead, Yes, my grandson is interested in that toy right there, pointing. The woman smiled and had her grandson retrieve the plush, handing it to her sister for dusting since it had been hanging all day and gathered some dirt. She was about to wrap it, but Naruto preferred it as is. The teen then handed the fox plush to Ami, who paid for it. What do you say, Naruto-chan? Ami asked. Naruto hugged the toy joyfully and looked up at the vendor. Thank you, he said cheerfully. The woman smiled in return and wished them a pleasant day. As they walked away, Naruto looked up at his grandmother. Ba-chan, can I go show mommy what I got? He asked sweetly. Ami smiled. I don't see why not. She turned to one of their guards. Do you know where Kushina-chan went? She asked kindly. Ami Uzumaki, like all clan members, was raised never to act arrogantly despite her status. They treated everyone, servants, allies, friends, even foes, with respect and equality. This attitude earned the Uzumaki clan much love and respect from other clans and villages, and even their enemies admired their humility. The samurai bowed. I believe Kushina-sama, Tsunade-sama, and Shizune-san mentioned something about going to the hot springs. Before anyone could respond, Naruto dashed toward that direction, eager to show his mother his prize. He laughed brightly, as any child would, while his grandmother and guards hurried to keep up. With Kushina, the voluptuous blonde known as Tsunade Senju sighed contentedly as she sank deeper into the soothing, warm water. Kushina and Shizune were already relaxing nearby. Around them were several women, some visitors to the festival, others locals, all enjoying the comforting hot springs. A few whispered quietly while eyeing the legendary Sannin and the princess of the Whirlpool Nation. The trio and the apprentice ignored the whispers, used to such attention. No matter how much I think about it, Yugakure's hot springs really are something else, Kushina murmured, stretching her legs beneath the water. And their casinos, Tsunade added with a familiar gleam in her eyes. She glanced at Kushina. Speaking of which, Kushina sighed, shaking her head. Sensei, we're not going to any casinos. The only reason we stopped here was because Mom wanted to start spoiling Naruto-kun before we got home. You'll have to ask her if you want to gamble. She smirked inwardly at her sensei's defeated expression. Despite being the strongest kunoichi and the greatest medical nin in the world, even Tsunade wasn't bold enough to challenge Ama Uzumaki. Hell, she doubted even her own grandfather would dare go against an Uzumaki woman like his wife. I'm still shocked that Hokage-sama let Naruto-kun suffer like that, Shizune remarked. She and her mentor had thoroughly reviewed Naruto's medical records, which were so extensive they required an entire shelf by themselves. Though they were appalled by how the villagers mistreated such an innocent child, it was even more distressing when Kushina read them. Tsunade had to summon all her strength just to prevent the redhead from leveling the whole village in anger. Tsunade sighed deeply. Sensei was always the kind of person who put too much trust in the villagers. I'm sure he tried his best to shield the boy, but with those two ancient relics as his teammates, plus that scoundrel Danzo, it probably wasn't an easy task. Before they could delve further into the subject, silence fell over the room as a child's scream echoed out. Mommy! With Naruto was running around near the hot spring, proudly carrying all his little trophies while a samurai kept watch over him. He was upset that the attendant wouldn't allow him into the women's section since men were forbidden, but he didn't protest because his grandmother, who had caught up with him, explained that the receptionist was only following the rules. He didn't understand why. He just wanted to show his mommy what he had won. What was so wrong with that? So that's how Naruto ended up exploring the outer areas of the facility, since Amai wouldn't come any further, worried about strangers getting near him. His thoughts drifted to their upcoming arrival at his new home in Whirlpool. His mother had told him that the Uzumaki clan held the highest nobility there, having founded both the country and its ninja village. In fact, Naruto's grandfather was the current daimyo, with Kushina next in line, followed by Naruto. When Naruto asked where they'd be living, Kushina said it would be in the daimyo's palace, which was supposedly the most beautiful and well-guarded place in the world. Though he'd never seen such a palace, he recalled hearing from the old man Hiruzen that they were huge with fancy decorations everywhere. But what really occupied his mind was whether he'd make any friends, or if people would genuinely like him. He didn't want kindness simply because he was a prince, as his mother said. He wanted to be liked for who he truly was. His thoughts were interrupted by giggling nearby. From what he could tell, the sound came from behind the hot springs, and his grandmother hadn't said he couldn't go there. So, curious, he decided to investigate. What he found was the strangest thing he'd ever seen. There stood a man Naruto recognized for sure. He had long white spiky hair tied into a ponytail. On his head was a forehead protector with horns and the kanji for oil. He wore a red haori over a short green kimono that matched his pants. On his feet were red geta sandals, and a large scroll was strapped to his back. But what puzzled Naruto most was that the man was peeking through the wooden wall of the hot springs, his cheeks flushed lightly, wearing a strange grin, holding a notepad and pencil. Seeing the man hadn't noticed him yet, Naruto tried to figure out what he was observing. Luckily, he found a hole in the wall at his height. Through it, he saw an entire room filled with women naked. What's so funny about seeing naked ladies? Naruto wondered innocently as his gaze flicked between the man and the women. Then his eyes landed on three familiar figures, his mother, Tsunade, and Shizune, all unclothed as well. Still not understanding why the man was spying on the naked women, Naruto didn't like the fact he was peeking at his mother. With that in mind, Naruto stomped over and poked the white-haired man's leg. "Hey mister, stop spying on them, it's rude," he said seriously for a 3-year-old. No response. The man just giggled and kept scribbling notes. Annoyed, Naruto kicked the man's leg. "Hey mister, didn't you hear me? Stop looking. It's rude." This time, the only reply was something wet and slimy wrapping around Naruto's waist and pulling him back. Startled, Naruto looked back and realized he was caught in the mouth of a giant toad. "Quiet brat, can't you see I'm conducting research?" the man said without turning toward Naruto. The sudden shock of being trapped by a massive creature triggered painful memories in Naruto's mind. Tears welled up as he struggled to break free. When that failed, he did the only thing left. With tears streaming down, he screamed at the top of his lungs, "Mommy!" The response was immediate. Part of the wall in front of Naruto burst apart, shocking the toad and the man, though Naruto was still crying. As the dust cleared, Kushina appeared, wrapped in a towel, her signature fiery red hair floating, followed by Tsunade, Shizune, and other women also clad in towels. Kushina's face was frantic as she searched for her son. When she spotted the toad holding Naruto by the tongue, she shouted, "Narutokun," then delivered a powerful kick to the toad's face, sending it flying and releasing Naruto, who was caught up by his mother, burying his face in her shoulder and crying. Tsunade, recognizing the toad as a summon, scowled when she saw the white-haired man, her ex-teammate Jiraiya, who had gone pale realizing he'd been caught spying on them. "Jiraiya Baka. How dare you spy on us and harm an innocent child?" Before Jiraiya could even glimpse mother and son, he was tackled by Tsunade and the other women, their fierce outrage raining down on him. Flashback end, present day, the result was clear. After the women finished beating the perverted sage senseless, Kushina joined in upon hearing that Jiraiya had frightened Naruto with his summon, and that the boy had tried to stop him from spying. This only earned Jiraiya another round of furious blows from the women, now even angrier that someone threatened an innocent child. Thankfully, the guards arrived, profusely apologizing to Kushina for not noticing Naruto had wandered off. Following her orders, they arrested the battered toad sage for trial in Whirlpool, charging him with spying on the princess, harming her son, and breaking his promise to watch over the boy for the past 3 years. That brings us to now, with Tashiyu and Tsunade waiting for Jiraiya to awaken. "Oh Kami, my head," Jiraiya groaned as he stirred. "Feels like I got trampled by a horde of giant toads." "I'm surprised you bounced back so quickly, Jiraiya," Tashiyu said, catching the sage's attention. "A woman's wrath is not something to take lightly." "Tashiyu-sama," Jiraiya looked at the person beside the daimyo. "Tsunade-heim, what how?" "Well, right now you're being held on Tashiyu-sama's personal ship en route to Whirlpool after getting your rear handed to you again," Tsunade said, glaring at her former teammate, making Jiraiya shrink beneath her stare. "When we arrive, you'll stand trial for your offenses against the Uzumaki clan. You'd better hope that the final verdict doesn't rest in Kushina-chan's hands," Tashiyu added sharply. Jiraiya's eyes went wide at the mention of his late student's wife. "Wait, Kushina's still alive," he shouted, gripping the bars of his cell tightly. "Why didn't she stay with Naruto?" His question was met with a mild shock from the sealing talismans attached to the bars, triggered by Tashiyu. "Don't even think about diverting the topic, Jiraiya," Tashiyu snarled, a faint aura of lethal intent leaking from him. "Tell me, where have you been all this time? Did you even know how much Naruto-kun has endured these past 3 years?" Kushina-chan almost lost control when she saw his medical reports. "You should pray that neither she nor Amai-chan ever show him those files, for Konoha's sake." Both Jiraiya and Tsunade visibly trembled at the name implied. The man Tashiyu was referring to was none other than his father, Sadahiko Uzumaki, the most formidable individual alive. His power surpassed even that of Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Some whispered that he might be the reincarnation of the Rikudo Sennin, or at least equal to him. The Uzumaki clan had settled in Whirlpool Nation long before Hashirama and Madara's era, living secluded from the conflicts of other clans. Yet Sadahiko, who became clan head at just 10 and daimyo by 15, ended their isolation. He forged a truce with their cousin clan, the Senju, and invited 14 other clans to settle on their land, establishing Uzushio as it is known today. Sadahiko Uzumaki was a master not only of Fuinjutsu but also Kenjutsu. However, what made him truly feared was his command of Onmyoten, the yin-yang release, the same power Hamura Otsutsuki possessed, manifested through his Rinnegan, much like his brother's. While the sage's Rinnegan was similar to the Sharingan, Hamura's resembled the Byakugan. With Onmyoten, he could create anything around him: earth, water, trees, air, even parts of his own body, akin to Hashirama's Mokyuten. He wielded yin and yang release as well, the two chakra natures that combine to form yin-yang release. Additionally, Sadahiko, the first Uzukage, alongside clan leaders of Uzushio's other clans, were celebrated as the strongest shinobi in the nation's history. He was fiercely loyal to his clan and friends. One tale told how he single-handedly obliterated 2 clans that tried to assassinate his younger sister, Mido Uzumaki. The clans vanished within a week of his discovery. Only the civilians and children survived because Sadahiko refused to harm the defenseless or young. If Sadahiko ever learned what had become of Naruto, his great-grandson, Konoha, would be reduced to ashes. Regaining his composure, Jiraiya shot a defiant glare at the Whirlpool daimyo. "Look, I understand your anger, and yes, I knew Naruto was struggling, but you have to realize I couldn't bring him with me. My spy network is vital for Konoha's survival against the other villages. I did send him monthly support so he could manage on his own." That earned Toshio an even sterner look. "If you knew he was suffering, you should have informed me. The Uzumaki clan would never permit one of our own to be mistreated so terribly. Yet our spies only discovered Naruto's existence 3 months ago, when you could have told us 3 years back." "What's your excuse for that?" Jiraiya winced. "It was Minato's wish that Naruto grow up to be a shinobi for Konoha. How could I deny my prize student's dying request? Besides, the other 4 great villages each have at least 2 Jinchuriki. Taking Naruto would upset the balance among the 5 great nations." Another shock from the ceiling marks sent Jiraiya tumbling onto his backside. "The way you put it, Jiraiya, sounds like you saw Naruto-kun as nothing more than a tool. In fact, if I had to guess, you thought the same of my daughter and aunt when they held the Kyuubi." The mention of his grandmother being called a weapon made Tsunade glare at her teammate. "I'll leave you for now, Jiraiya. And if you keep making excuses like Kakashi did, Kushina will treat you the same way." Toshio added, recalling when Kushina confronted Kakashi, demanding why he hadn't been there for Naruto. Kakashi said he was grieving Minato's loss. But Kushina had punched him so hard he nearly lost all his teeth, then scolded him severely about dealing with pain and taking responsibility, since she grieved her husband and child, but carried on regardless. With that, Toshio and Tsunade left, leaving Jiraiya alone with his thoughts. Several hours later, "Mommy, look, land!" Naruto shouted excitedly from the ship's bow, pointing eagerly at the first sight of land since they set sail. Indeed, the Whirlpool Nation's shores were approaching. From the ship, they could see towering mountains on the island, sandy beaches a few miles ahead, and jagged rocks with seals before that. Most striking were the enormous whirlpools churning in the ocean. "Yes, Soichi, that's Whirlpool country," Kushina said gently, steadying the restless Naruto so he wouldn't stumble. "That's home." Naruto's eyes widened as he gazed longingly at the island. But soon he asked, "Mommy, how do we get past those big swirling waters?" Unaware they were whirlpools. Kushina giggled softly. "Those, Naruto-kun, are whirlpools. That's why our land is called the Land of Whirlpools. Don't worry, they're man-made by our first female clan leader, Autumn Uzumaki. The whirlpools part to create a path for those of Uzumaki blood, letting us enter safely while protecting the island. If outsiders come near, our sealing barriers alert us, allowing the barrier teams to control the whirlpools." Naruto made an ooh sound, amazed by his clan's power. He looked out again as the whirlpools parted, clearing a way for the ship. Even some soldiers and servants, who had witnessed this many times, marveled at the whirlpools moving on command. But for Naruto, it meant much more, something he had always dreamed of. Home. A place with family, people who loved him and whom he loved in return. One thing was certain, he couldn't wait to begin his new life. Whirlpool estate huge. That was the only word Naruto could find in his limited vocabulary to describe the estate. Holding tightly to his mother's hand, his eyes drank in every detail of their new residence. 5 towering spires encircled a 6th, larger tower at the center, each adorned with oversized clan emblems and other peculiar symbols that gave each tower a distinctive appearance. Around these grand towers were numerous smaller buildings, some connected by bridges. Encircling everything stood a vast pearl-white wall, where numerous figures stood watch guards, as his mother explained. The most striking feature, however, was that the entire estate rested on an island within the nation, surrounded by several whirlpools in the surrounding waters. The only link between this small island and the mainland was a long dirt path that Naruto and the convoy were traveling along. Yet Naruto noticed some familiar faces missing, including his uncle. "Mommy, where did Uncle Hissen, Auntie Tsunade, and Shizunichin go?" he asked, looking up at the red-haired woman. Kushina smiled as she drew her son onto her lap, causing Naruto to snuggle instinctively against her. Tsunade-sensei and Shizune returned to Uzushio with Uncle Hissen to check on the hospital. Uncle Hissen is bringing his family here. I'm sure your cousin Karin will be thrilled to meet you, Soichi, since you two are about the same age. She left out that Hissen had informed Hiruzen about Jiraiya's arrest during their return to Whirlpool for spying on the Whirlpool princess and assaulting her son. There was also talk that Sadahiko might visit Konoha due to these incidents and how Naruto was treated there. The wrath of the Red God was not something to be taken lightly, but Sadahiko would inevitably find out because anything involving the Uzumaki clan always came to his attention. Naruto giggled happily at the thought of finally meeting another family member his age, along with the rest of the clan. He was so engrossed in talking with his mother that he didn't notice they had passed through the palace gate until Kushina lifted him from her lap. Well, Soichi, we've arrived. This is your new home. At the mention of home, Naruto bounced excitedly from the carriage, stepping onto the palace grounds for the first time. He looked up in awe at the reception before him. Hundreds of samurai, servants, officials, and even a few ninjas stood in perfect formation, banners held high. Not used to so many people, Naruto became shy and hid behind his mother, who had already stepped out of the carriage. Kushina smiled as her parents approached them. So, what do you think, Naruto-kun? Tashiu asked his grandson. Naruto peeked from beneath his mother's kimono, meeting the eyes of all those watching with wonder. Big, he whispered softly just as Kushina lifted him into her arms. The group began moving toward the palace, with the assembled crowd parting to honor their lord, lady, princess, and the returned son. Meanwhile, their escorts began unloading supplies, including Naruto's belongings from Ikaraku. Time seemed to blur for Naruto as he admired every detail of the palace, inside and out, marveling at its beauty. He didn't even notice when a servant approached the elders and announced, Tashiu-sama, Amai-sama, Kushina-sama, and Naruto-sama are requested in the clan meeting room. Sadahiko-sama awaits your arrival and wishes to discuss recent events at Konoha. Kushina was taken aback, clutching Naruto's hand firmly to keep him from wandering. Jiji is here. I thought we would meet him at the Tenzin. The Tenzin, Heaven Mountain, was a towering structure, at least 500 feet tall, situated in a secluded area of the country. It was established when the Uzumaki clan settled on the island for privacy. The Tenzin served as a library, laboratory, archive, and to some, a retirement home. Sadahiko had retired there to pursue his passion for knowledge, as travel was no longer possible for him. He seldom left the tower unless it was important, and only kept a few company inside. I should have guessed father would come here rather than wait for us at the Tenzin, Tashiu remarked, as the group headed toward the meeting room. He always wants the latest news about the clan and has no patience to wait, he added, earning nods from the others. Minutes later, they reached the clan meeting room, a solitary chamber with a wide table surrounded by chairs. Clan emblems hung on the walls alongside trophies, the heads of each of the 9 Biju. At the far end sat a man drinking a large cup of sake. He appeared about Hiruzen's age, but had a mix of gray and red spiky hair tied in a ponytail down his back. A short red beard matched his thick red eyebrows. He wore a simple black kimono beneath a dark blue haori, draped like a cape, emblazoned with the clan's symbol on its back. A staff topped with the clan's emblem rested against the table. Unlike Hiruzen, his face bore fewer wrinkles, but was marked by a scar crossing his forehead and connecting to another over his left eye, which remained functional. When he finished his sake, the man looked up at the newcomers, his dark blue eyes gleaming. Yo, he said. Tashiu, what in Kami's name took you so long? I nearly fell asleep waiting. Hinoka-chan's probably going to scold me when I get back. I even finished the sake I was saving for you all. Tashiu scratched the back of his head awkwardly, while Amai pinched her nose, both annoyed by the most powerful man's casual attitude. Kushina giggled as Naruto stared curiously at the old man. Mommy, who is that? Naruto asked. Hearing Naruto's voice, Sadahiko looked down and spotted the blonde boy. With a simple flick of his finger, Naruto was lifted off the ground, letting out a yelp as he realized he was floating. Calm down, child. I just want to meet you, Sadahiko said as the adults watched amused. Naruto slowly floated toward the elder Uzumaki and was gently set down on the table. Still stunned, he didn't notice Sadahiko studying him until the older man poked his finger toward him. So, you're my great-grandson Naruto, huh? Sadahiko said, lightly poking Naruto's left cheek. Annoyed, Naruto retaliated by tapping Sadahiko's nose. Naruto-kun, Kushina scolded. Don't hit your Hijiji. But Sadahiko just chuckled softly, not a loud or wild laugh but a kind, amused chuckle. Naruto couldn't help but giggle back, especially when Sadahiko gave him a playful grin and ruffled his hair. I like you, kid. You definitely have the spirit of the Uzumaki, Sadahiko said, tousling Naruto's hair a bit more. Naruto gave a nod but then frowned slightly. Hijiji, why does everyone in my family have red hair? He asked with innocent curiosity. While Sadahiko and Naruto chatted about the topic of red hair, Kushina was speaking quietly with her parents. It's heartwarming to see Naruto-kun bonding so well with Jiji, Kushina murmured to them. Tashiyu glanced briefly at the two with spiky hair and nodded. Indeed. Aunt Mito once told me about what father was like as a child. If I had to guess, Naruto-kun seems like a younger version of him. Yes, and Naruto appears very at ease with him even though he just met Sadahiko-sama moments ago, Amai added. Kushina was about to respond when Sadahiko suddenly spoke, capturing their attention. Oh, by the way, Naruto-kun, I brought you a gift, Sadahiko said, smirking at the sparkle in Naruto's eyes. I bet you'll like it, right now. Naruto eagerly nodded. Sadahiko rummaged through his belongings and soon pulled out a book adorned with a circle of 12 rings on the cover. Each ring bore the kanji symbol for a zodiac sign. This is a very special book of mine, Naruto-kun, Sadahiko explained as he handed it over. Naruto's eyes widened as he stared at the cover. And amazing things happen when you read it, the elder Uzumaki added. Naruto's expression shifted from wonder to a sad frown, which Sadahiko noticed immediately. But Hijiji, I don't know how to read, Naruto said softly, a sniff escaping him. Kushina, Tashiyu, and Amai all looked shocked, while Sadahiko's face remained unreadable. After a moment the elder asked, What do you mean, Naruto-kun? Weren't you taught to read back in Konoha? Sadahiko was puzzled, since children Naruto's age usually knew how to read, and no one had told him about Naruto's treatment in the village. Naruto shook his head sadly, tears beginning to form. No, the cruel lady at the orphanage would yell at me every time I came for story time or lessons. If I didn't leave, she'd hit me hard in the face and call me a filthy demon, saying demons should remain ignorant. Tears began to trickle down his cheeks. Sadahiko lowered his head, his hair hiding his expression as he absorbed Naruto's words. To everyone except Naruto, a dark, ominous aura began radiating from the elder, threatening to fill the entire room, even the palace. After a few tense seconds, Sadahiko lifted his gaze to his great-grandson, a gentle smile on his face. Well, Naruto-kun, just because you can't read yet doesn't mean you can't learn. I'm sure your mother would be happy to teach you. And if you want, I or others can help too. How does that sound? Naruto looked up and gave a faint smile, earning a broad grin from Sadahiko, though the adults could sense it was masking rising anger. Good, I'm sure you're tired, Naruto-kun, so I'll let your mother take you to your new room. He motioned to Kushina, who quickly approached and scooped her son up, letting him rest against her shoulder. What do you say, Naruto-kun? Kushina asked softly. Naruto, still holding the book, looked at Sadahiko and whispered, Thank you, Hijiji. Sadahiko smiled once more and watched as mother and son left the room, leaving him and the grandparents behind. Once the door closed, Sadahiko fixed a cold stare on his son and daughter-in-law, who stiffened under the intense gaze. Care to explain what exactly happened in Konoha? Tashiyu and Amai exchanged nervous glances and swallowed hard. One thing was certain. The fate of Konoha rested on their words as they began to recount Naruto's life in the village to the most powerful man alive. Konoha life in Konoha had shifted dramatically over just a few days. The revelation about Naruto's heritage dealt a severe blow to village morale. Not only had they mistreated the son of their greatest hero since the first Hokage, but also a member of the noble Uzumaki clan. Several wealthy, greedy merchant families realized their hopes of securing royal ties by arranging an engagement between their daughters and Naruto had vanished. The shinobi were hit hardest. Many struggled to face their own reflections, haunted by memories of how they had caused Naruto pain, whether directly or indirectly, and tormented by the fact they had harmed the only child of the fourth Hokage. They also felt vulnerable without the Uzumaki clan's emblem on their vests, the symbol of their cousin clan, the Senju. Overall, the atmosphere in Konoha had darkened considerably, with no one imagining things could deteriorate further. What? They were mistaken. Back in the council room, the Shinobi Council, Civilian Council, elders, and the Hokage were discussing recent Uzumaki clan changes to Konoha, as well as some discoveries Hiruzen made in civilian documents. Having finally mastered the paperwork beast, the third Hokage uncovered that some civilian council members were plotting for greater power and harshly confronted them about their treason. They were listening to Danzo speak about bolstering the military now that the Kyubai's Jinchuriki was gone, when a Chunin burst in with a letter bearing the Uzumaki clan's seal. The letter Hiruzen read was what had caused his outburst. "Sandame-sama, what is it? What happened?" Koharu asked her former teammate. Hiruzen put the letter down and rubbed his nose, muttering to himself. Then, calming himself, he addressed the council. "I've just received word from the Uzukage that Jirya of the Sannin was arrested a few days ago and taken into custody in the Whirlpool Nation." Gasps echoed through the room. Shiba finally asked, "What are the charges?" Hiruzen reread the letter before replying, first, neglect of his responsibilities as Naruto-kun's godfather. Second, causing harm to the boy using one of his summons. And lastly, he sighed heavily. He was caught spying on the women's hot springs while Kushina-chan was there, invading the privacy of the Whirlpool Princess. Everyone groaned or repeatedly banged their heads on the table. They couldn't believe how badly things had unraveled in just days. They barely escaped the Uzumaki clan's wrath before and now faced it anew. "Will this impact us?" Choza asked. Hiruzen rubbed his nose again. "I'm uncertain. Most likely, Jirya will be banned from the Whirlpool Nation. Execution seems unlikely, but I will send an apology letter to Tashiyu-sama for my student's conduct." Now to see what the remainder of the letter says. Everyone raised an eyebrow as the Hokage's voice slowed while reading the rest. His face grew pale and his left eye twitched violently. "Hiruzen?" Hamaru asked, concerned. After a few seconds, Hiruzen found his voice, though still pale. "They said there's a chance we might receive a visit from Sadahiko Uzumaki." The elders and clan leaders paled at the name, while others looked confused. One civilian council member asked, "Who is this Sadahiko? He doesn't sound too threatening. Surely someone like you, Hokage-sama, can handle him." The Hokage, along with the clan elders and leaders, stared at the man as if he had lost his sanity. Eventually, Hiruzen chose to clarify things for them. "I doubt even Sadahiko would break a sweat facing them. He's called the Red God, the Destroyer, the Red Sage, and the Titan's Wrath. His abilities are boundless. Many believe he's either the reincarnation of the Rikudo Sennin or his equal in power. Not even Hashirama Sensei or Madara Uchiha could defeat him, even when they joined forces." Those words left everyone staring at the Hokage in shock. They looked toward the three elders, and when they received nods of confirmation, their faces drained of color. Finally, Tsume spoke up. "Wait, you said the first Hokage and Madara Uchiha couldn't defeat this man. How old is he exactly?" Hiruzen searched for his pipe, knowing he'd need a strong smoke to properly explain this. "According to my teacher, Sadahiko is 9 years older than Hashirama, also his brother-in-law, and was the sensei to both him, Madara, and Mito. That means he's around 100 years old." He placed the pipe in his mouth before continuing. "There's also a rumor he was the one who taught Hashirama to master Mokyuten and even uncovered the secrets behind the Sharingan. My sensei told me Sadahiko once wiped out 2 entire clans when they attempted to kill his younger sister Mito. Besides sealing techniques, he's skilled in Kenjutsu, Taijutsu, and Ninjutsu, especially Omniton, and he wields it on a massive scale." If they hadn't been frightened before, the council was certainly terrified now, considering the Hokage's description. "Isn't there something we can do?" asked a nervous civilian council member, desperate for a way to counter this potential threat. Before Hiruzen could answer, a loud voice interrupted, "Hiruzen Sarutobi. In Konoha's plaza very few shinobi can fly, even though such an ability would be extremely useful. The only known individuals capable are the current Tsuchikage, Anoki, and his mentor, the second Tsuchikage, Mu. But the one who managed it first was none other than Sadahiko Uzumaki, who could move at near-light speed when enraged, and right now, he was furious. That's why he arrived at Konoha so quickly. Every word his son and wife spoke about Naruto's treatment in the village made the room they were in begin to crack under the pressure of the elder Uzumaki's growing anger. When they finished, he dashed out of the room, the palace, and the entire nation faster than you could say, "Oh no." Now Sadahiko stood at the center of a crater he created upon landing in Konoha's plaza, knocking people off their feet and sending several stalls flying backward. Shinobi had already begun gathering around him, even before he shouted the third Hokage's name, but none dared approach the Uzumaki, who was visibly radiating golden chakra from his body. A few shinobi, either reckless or courageous, charged at him with weapons raised. But the elder Uzumaki simply swung his arms, releasing a swirling gust of golden chakra that sent those fools and others hurtling backward. As he moved toward the mansion, a Nara clan member attempted to stop him using his shadow possession technique. But his shadow broke away from Sadahiko's, shocking the Nara shinobi. "You're a century too early to hold me back, brat," Sadahiko shouted, striking the air like it was solid. Cracks appeared in the space around him, unleashing a shockwave that threw the Nara, other people, and nearby buildings backward. "He's a monster," exclaimed a newly arrived Chunin, witnessing Sadahiko's power. Upon hearing the comment, Sadahiko vanished and slammed the Chunin into the ground, creating a crater centered on the impact. The force caused surrounding shinobi to stumble and fall. The injured Chunin, feeling several bones snap under Sadahiko's foot pressing his chest, noticed the elder Uzumaki's eyes glowing gold like the chakra enveloping him. "You bastards touched this monster's family and made them cry for 3 years," Sadahiko growled in a deep, dark, demonic voice. "Don't even think laws or gods will save you." The Chunin and many others literally panicked at that declaration, and the intense killing intent radiating from Sadahiko. He lifted the Chunin and hurled him violently into another group of shinobi. The old Uzumaki prepared to continue, only to find himself face-to-face with Hiruzen Sarutobi, the clan heads, and a sizable group of ANBU. Behind them stood more shinobi and some civilians, including members of the civilian council. Despite their numbers, the group clearly showed signs of intimidation by Sadahiko's overwhelming presence. Hiruzen spoke first, hoping to calm the godlike figure. "Greetings, Sadahiko-sama. It is an cut the nonsense, monkey gaki," Sadahiko snapped at the Hokage. "You know why I'm here, and you know you punks don't stand a chance against me." He released another wave of killing intent, making many very nervous. "I'll be merciful and give you 5 minutes to explain why you haven't leveled this damn village yet." Hiruzen swallowed hard, choosing his words carefully. "I understand why you've come, because of how your great-grandson was treated." He flinched as Sadahiko emitted another chakra burst. The pressure shattered glass up to 3 miles away and cracked nearby buildings. But blaming the entire village for the actions of a few isn't something you, Kushina-chan, or Naruto-kun would want. Taking lives for past mistakes is not the answer. He rushed his words, trying to prevent further damage. He knew that even as the third Hokage, not he nor the combined ninjas of Konoha could stand against an enraged Sadahiko Uzumaki. Sadahiko glared at Hiruzen before replying. "You're full of lies, monkey boy," he roared, blasting some clan elders and shinobi backward. "Even though you claim to have done your best for Naruto-kun, you let your age interfere with your leadership and ignored your successor's dying wishes. Do you know how much Kushina-chan cried for 3 years, or how much Naruto-kun suffered because of your failure?" Sadahiko didn't pause for an answer. "And you're a fool for announcing Naruto-kun's identity to the whole village. Don't you know a Jinchuriki's status must remain secret? How do you think Mito-nichan or Kushina-chan lived here without constant scorn from these fools?" He then glared at the 3 elders and some civilians. "And you people are even worse, no, worse than idiots. Calling you bugs would be an insult to bugs everywhere. You 3, he said, eyeing Koharu, Himura, and Danzo, think only militarily and never consider feelings. How can you be Tobirama's students if you lack such understanding?" He unleashed a chakra blast, sending buildings and people, including civilian council members, flying through the air. Then he fixed his glare on Danzo. "And don't think I haven't figured out what you planned with my great-grandson, mummy boy." Danzo narrowed his eyes. "And as for the rest of you," he said, turning to the council and shinobi, "what the hell is wrong with you?" His roar caused some weak-willed to faint, including Jonin and ANBU. This was Sadahiko we're talking about. "You ninjas should understand sealing techniques better. Yet, blinded by grief, you're mistreating an innocent child who had no control over this, who lost his father and nearly his mother on the night he was born. And some of you have children of your own and still scorn yell, and sometimes beat a child his age." After the rant, many lowered their heads in shame. Despite their denial, they knew Sadahiko spoke the truth. Turning back to Hiruzen, who looked years older, Sadahiko said calmly, I want to destroy this village, or at least cripple it so badly it takes 10 generations to recover. He paused as golden chakra reappeared. But for now, for Maito-chan's sake, the guilt and shame you feel will be punishment enough. However, he slammed his fist into the ground, causing a large crack that spread toward an abandoned building which exploded. If any of you ever hurt my family, my friends, or anyone I care for, he warned, I will unleash my wrath upon you all. Seeing their stunned silence as agreement, Sadahiko prepared to leave. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a celebration to attend, and a trial for that perverted student of yours, Hiruzen. With that, the most powerful man since the Rikudo Sennin ascended into the sky, leaving behind a village damaged in both structure and spirit. Uzumaki clan meeting chamber. The Uzumaki council consisted of 9 individuals, including Hissen, the current clan leader. Toshiyu, Amai, Sadahiko, Kushina, and Keen, who was Toshiyu and Amai's third child and younger sibling to both Hissen and Kushina, were honorary members. Unlike typical clan councils formed by elders, this council was composed of clan members recognized for their abilities, influence, and character. Most were in their 40s or 50s, though some were younger, ranging from their 20s to 30s. The youngest member presently was 17, making him the second youngest ever, only surpassed by Sadahiko, who joined at 15 and eventually became clan head. Toshiyu was not the clan leader because of his role as the country's ruler, and a law instituted by Sadahiko at the village's founding prevented anyone from holding both the clan head and daimyo positions simultaneously, as many felt it would grant the Uzumaki clan excessive power. However, at present, Toshiyu was leading the council temporarily because Hissen was required back in Uzushio, concerned about his grandson, who was expected to succeed Toshiyu's daughter Kushina as daimyo. Among the members was Tatsu Uzumaki, the tallest on the council. His face bore 2 scars crossing in an X pattern, adding to his stern appearance. His red hair, streaked with gray, hung loosely to his neck. With tanned skin and a muscular build, Henkin wore a long black fur coat with no shirt beneath, paired with brown pants and sandals. He was famed for his immense power and his dual-piston gauntlets used in combat, earning the nickname Kyodana during the Third Shinobi World War. Trained by Sadahiko, he was as loyal to family and friends as his master. Next to him sat Renga Uzumaki, one of 2 female members, the eldest woman and second eldest council member, roughly Kushina's age. Despite being in her mid-40s, she retained her beauty, her pale white skin smooth, and long red hair tied in a sleek ponytail. Madoka wore a simple yet elegant purple-red kimono patterned with water droplets that revealed her ample bust. Renowned as a doctor and scientist, her expertise in blending barrier and medical ninjutsu rivaled Tsunade's. Calm and rational, with a hint of humor, she was well respected and often the voice of reason. Hahin Uzumaki, the clan's premier archer, was next. His spiky red hair reached his neck, and his unusual yellow eyes contrasted strikingly with his tan complexion. He wore a red flak jacket over a black sweatshirt, black fingerless gloves, dark blue shinobi pants, black sandals, and bandages wrapped around his ankles. Visors rested on the desk before him. Hahin spoke rarely, only when necessary, maintaining composure even in perilous moments. Following Hahin was Jakuna Uzumaki, leader of the daimyo's royal guard, the Sekioku, Toshiyu's younger brother, and Sadahiko's second son. Known as Shinku Nobore due to his intimidating aura and appearance, he wore the Sekioku uniform, a red jacket with black trim and sleeve collars, paired with mainly black pants featuring red collars at the bottom. A black hooded cape draped over his body, fastened by a small zipper. His messy red hair extended to mid-back, with pale skin and deep blue eyes. Jakuna was a strategist in the last 2 wars, his intellect rivaling the Nara clans. He coordinated the nation's defense against the joint Kumo and Iwa forces in the Second Shinobi World War. Then came Futoji Uzumaki, an unusual figure with his entire body wrapped in bandages, concealing severe scars from his past. His short red hair barely passed his neck. Over his bandaged form, he wore a black and white kimono and wooden sandals similar to Jiraiya's. Unlike others, he sat cross-legged on a floating palanquin. Futoji was a master of all 5 elemental styles, creating his own unique combat method. He was also the oldest council member when Sadahiko was absent. Jishin Uzumaki was the clan's finest swordsman, second only to Sadahiko. He wielded a bakken forged entirely from chakra metal and was responsible for training Kushina and Hissen in kenjutsu. He wore a gray sleeveless hayori over a black jacket, shirt, and pants. His red hair was tied in an upward ponytail, and 3 scars marked his face, 1 over his lip and 2 crossing his closed eyes. His bakken, tosho, sword sheath leaned against his side. The second female member, Momo Uzumaki, specialized in assassination and poison. At 23, she admired Kushina as the ideal kunoichi. Though tomboyish, she was stunning, with red hair in 2 pigtails, green eyes, and tan skin, giving her an intimidating yet attractive look. She wore a short black and yellow kimono with long sleeves, black leggings beneath a long black and yellow skirt. Lastly was Don Uzumaki, the council's youngest member, selected for his sociability and lightning manipulation skills. He had blue eyes, fair skin, and short spiky red hair. His attire included a long-sleeve gray-blue vest with a high collar covering his mouth and lower face, paired with dark blue shinobi pants and long black sandals. The chamber had been rearranged so all 9 members, plus Sadahiko, sat around Georgia, who stood in the center with a chakra-suppressing tag on his chest. Not that it mattered much. Sadahiko ensured Georgia wouldn't leave regardless. When everyone settled, Tashiyu glanced at his father, who nodded at the daimyo before he turned his gaze to Georgia. Georgia, Toad Sage, and one of Konoha's 3 Sannin, do you understand why you've been brought here? Tashiyu asked sternly. Georgia hesitated briefly before replying, I suppose it's about me spying on your daughter at the hot springs, he said cheekily, drawing sharp glares. That's one reason, Tashiyu said, scanning reports. The other concerns your connection to Naruto Uzumaki, son of Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze, your prized student. Georgia bowed his head, anticipating what came next as Zangiaku stepped forward. According to Kushina, she and Minato requested you become Naruto's godfather, named after the main character in your first book, a role you accepted. You know the responsibilities that entails, correct? Georgia simply nodded. Tashiyu continued, then tell me, Georgia, where were you during the Kyubai's assault on Konoha? Georgia thought briefly. Near the border between fire and earth countries, when I received a message from Sensei via messenger monkey about the attack. And what did you do after getting the message? Tashiyu pressed. Sighing, Georgia answered, I went to Konoha to assess the damage and check on the seal placed on Naruto. I stayed about a month, ensuring all was done to protect Naruto from Minato's foes before leaving to oversee my spy network again. Momo, who had been shooting sharp looks at Georgia the entire time, asked, Really? And how exactly does traveling to the land of hot water, to snoop on the hot springs, and visit brothels count as maintaining your intelligence network? Or are you suggesting that you even have contacts in places like those? Georgia was about to respond when Dawn interrupted. I think we have already established that Georgia left Naruto-sama immediately after checking on him. What I want to know is why we were never informed of the boy's survival, especially when Kushina-sama told us 3 years ago that her child was declared dead. Look, I had no clue Kushina was alive. Georgia protested. I was told she died alongside Minato. Hell, Sensei even showed me the body. Tashiyu rubbed his chin thoughtfully. While I acknowledge that was no fault of your own, you still haven't explained why we weren't told about my grandson's survival. Or was it, if I remember correctly, your reasoning on the ship? The other 4 great nations each have at least 2 Jinchuriki, and taking Naruto would disrupt the balance between the 5 great nations. That's what you said. And from how you spoke, it sounds like you consider all Jinchuriki, past and present, as mere weapons to be wielded in battle. What? Sadahiko shouted, glaring at Georgia with chakra intensifying around him, causing the room to tremble slightly. Are you seriously saying my little sister, granddaughter, and great-grandson are just tools of war? His voice echoed, charged with fury. I meant nothing of the sort. Georgia yelled back, struggling to withstand the murderous aura directed at him. I only meant that since the village was still recovering from the Kyubai's assault, if word got out that the Jinchuriki had left Konoha, villages like Iwa or Kumo would seize the opportunity to invade. Moreover, I believe that's enough, Tatsu interrupted sharply. It's clear to me that this man has no excuse for neglecting his responsibility as godfather or for hiding Naruto-sama's existence from us. Also, according to what Tashiyu-sama discovered through the mind scan seal we placed on the pervert, It's obvious Jirya knew how Naruto-sama was treated in Konoha. In summary, I say he is guilty of betraying the clan, Naruto-sama, Kushina-sama, and Minato-san's trust. I concur with Tatsu-san, Dawn added, echoed by the rest of the council. The only justification I can see for Jirya's absence is his grief over losing his prized student, who was like a son to him. Still, that does not excuse his crimes, and we must decide his punishment. Jirya stared at them, stunned, but knew better than to speak. To the Uzumaki clan, breaking promises to loved ones was the gravest offense. I vote we execute him for betraying our clan, Momo shouted, then added, or at the very least castrate the scoundrel. That might be a bit harsh, Momo-chan, Renga commented, noticing how pale Jirya had grown hearing Momo's suggestion. I think a more fitting penalty would be to banish Jirya from Whirlpool Country, barring entry unless granted permission. And Kushina-sama should decide if he may see Naruto-kun, assuming she still consents to him being the boy's godfather. Toshiyu nodded. That sounds reasonable. Anyone else? When no one else spoke, Toshiyu fixed his gaze on Jirya. Jirya of Konoha, as daimyo of Whirlpool Country, I hereby banish you from entering this nation or having contact with our people outside it. Even for matters of great importance, entry must be approved by us, and Kushina-chan alone will decide if you may have any interaction with Naruto-kun. This decision is final. He slammed his gravel down firmly on the table. Yeah. Now get out of here, Sadahiko added, forming a ram sign. A seal beneath Jirya flared brightly, and suddenly the toad sage was launched out of the building, flying over the ocean back to Fire Country. The chakra-suppressing seal had already lifted, but his screams were ignored. Everyone looked at Sadahiko, who wore a sly grin. Ha, I've always wanted to do that. The old Uzumaki chuckled, grinning wider, causing nervous sweat drops from the council members. What? Sadahiko asked, noticing their looks. Don't worry, he'll land in Konoha. Considering how often he gets roughed up by women there, he'll probably be walking again in 3 days or so, he said dismissively, drawing even more nervous glances. Whirlpool Daimyo Palace. Later that evening inside the Whirlpool Palace, a celebration was in full swing to honor the arrival of the next heir of Whirlpool, Naruto Uzumaki. The heads of every Uzushio clan, along with other notable figures from the country, gathered in the palace or outside, where a large festival had been arranged, with people enjoying themselves immensely. Children in kimonos ran around, playing just as kids their age would. The palace and key areas were guarded by the koihei, all dressed like jakuna, with the kanji for guard emblazoned on their heiori backs, wearing light armor on their jackets and pants. They carried swords and spears, inscribed with seals that enhanced their lethality. Ama Uzumaki stood with her daughter and several other women in a corner of the large room. Her eyes caught sight of her grandson Naruto playing with her granddaughter, Karin Uzumaki, daughter of Hissen. Like her father, Karin had spiky red hair cut shorter to her shoulders. Her skin was lighter than Naruto's, and she had red eyes behind glasses. She wore a red kimono with purple stripes, while Naruto wore a blue kimono adorned with the Uzumaki clan symbol. From what Amai observed, the children and others were telling Naruto about what life in Uzushio was like. I'm glad Karin-chan and the others are getting along so well with Naruto-chan, Amai said to Kushina and Nari Uzumaki, Karin's mother. Unlike her husband and daughter, Nari had long, straight red hair down her back, mostly tied in a ponytail. She also wore glasses like her daughter and had red eyes. Her skin was tan, unlike her husband's white tone, though not as pale as her sister's. Nari wore a dark blue kimono with light blue patterns, while Kushina wore a red kimono decorated with yellow flowers. Yes, I was worried that Naruto-kun's time in Konoha might have affected his social skills, Kushina said with a tone of relief. I still can't believe they'd treat a child so cruelly, Nari commented. What puzzles me is why Sadahiko-sama didn't raise the village when he learned about what happened to Naruto-kun. His reason was that he thought living with the guilt would be a harsher punishment, Toshiyu answered, approaching them. The real reason involves his sister, Aunt Mito. Toshiyu-kun, where did you come from? Amai asked her husband. I was just speaking with father. He had to leave because his and Hissen's presence was noticed at the Nishimura compound. I don't know why yet, but I'm sure Hissen will inform me when he returns, the daimyo replied. The three women nodded silently before Kushina asked, Father, what do you mean Jiji didn't act because of Mito-sama? As you know, your grandfather cherished his younger sister enough to destroy two clans that threatened her, Toshiyu said, receiving nods in response. Well, Aunt Mito loved Hashirama-sama, and he loved her back. That's why they married. Moreover, she loved Konoha deeply enough to stay even after Hashirama-sama passed. He watched as the women pieced it together. So you see, while Sadahiko likely despises Konoha, he won't destroy it because doing so would mean turning his back on his sister, and he could never face her after destroying the village she loved. Before anyone could respond, a servant entered quietly and approached the daimyo discreetly. Daimyo-sama, a messenger from the Jinrin clan, Silver Lotus, has arrived. He says the message is from Sadahiko-sama, Hisan-sama, and Chokyusen-sama. Toshiyu and the women exchanged glances, curious about the contents of the message. Uzushio, Jinrin estate. The estate belonging to the esteemed Jinrin clan was bustling with clan members and Uzu-anbu operatives. Many focused on performing seals or gripping their weapons tightly. These seals formed a formidable barrier encasing the main clan dojo, where occasional surges of chakra burst forth. Each time the chakra struck the barrier, it trembled slightly before dissipating. If one paid close attention, the sharp clang of metal colliding could be heard, fierce and unrelenting. Near this protective barrier stood two men, Hisan Uzumaki and Chokyusen Jinrin, the clan's leader. Chokyusen was a man in his mid to late 30s, with black hair long enough to reach his shoulders if not tied back in a ponytail. His complexion was tan, and his dark eyes bore a prominent scar running down his left cheek. His clothing consisted of a grayish-blue short-sleeved shirt layered over a mesh undershirt, paired with matching shinobi trousers and black sandals. A black belt secured a sword at his waist, while an ankle-length black coat with long sleeves and fingerless gloves completed his outfit. Both men kept a close watch on the dojo, hands resting on their swords, prepared for the worst. The overwhelming chakra and inhuman aura of lethal intent radiating from the dojo forced several nearby shinobi to step back just to maintain their composure. An hour passed, the tumult and intense energy faded away, leaving an eerie silence. The gathering was left uncertain whether this calm was a relief or a harbinger of something worse. Impatient, Hisan finally commanded, "Lower the barrier." The team maintaining the seals complied, and as the barrier fell, the Uzukage and clan leader advanced toward the dojo, accompanied by some of their shinobi. Upon reaching the entrance, Hisan glanced briefly at Chokyusen, who simply gave a nod. The two cautiously entered the dojo, now a scene of devastation, as if a fierce battle had taken place. The walls, floor, and ceiling bore scars from sword strikes, large cracks, and craters from chakra explosions. Burn marks dotted several spots. At the center lay two figures, one standing, the other prone on the ground. The figure on the floor was a young boy, no older than 5, clad in a torn red kimono yet unharmed. His skin was tan, and his black hair reached to his neck. Beside him lay a shattered katana, split in two. The man looming above was none other than Sadahiko Uzumaki. Dressed casually, though missing the right sleeve and sporting a few minor scratches, he gripped his sword firmly in his right hand. His hair appeared slightly disheveled, but his expression remained calm, far from exhausted. His dark eyes fixed intently on the unconscious boy. "Jiji," Hisan spoke softly as he approached his grandfather. Sadahiko met his gaze, then turned to Chokyusen, who was focused on the boy. "Do not worry, Chokyusen-san, your son is stable now. I was able to calm his chakra and place a seal to suppress its wild fluctuations," Sadahiko assured. Gratefully, Chokyusen rushed to his son's side and gently lifted him up. As other Jinrin clan members drew near their leader, Hisan stepped toward Sadahiko, concern evident in his expression. "Jiji, that chaotic chakra. And the deadly intent, was it really?" "Yes," Sadahiko answered gravely, a shadow crossing his face as memories of a long-ago fierce duel with a sword-wielding woman surfaced. Little Jinsoku Jinrin's chakra mirrors that of his ancestor, Tanishime Jinrin, the clan head of my era. Hisan swallowed nervously, his usually stoic demeanor faltering as he looked back at the boy now carried by his father to the medical wing of the compound. "So that means Jinsoku is the second Kijin of the Jinrin clan," Sadahiko finished with a faint smile. "And if I'm right, this generation might even surpass mine. Over a century ago. Unknown location, on a storm-ridden, rain-soaked night. A young Sadahiko Uzumaki clad in light red samurai armor, over a blue cloak dodged, just in time to avoid decapitation from a swinging scythe. He countered with a powerful broadsword strike, meeting two black scythes wielded by Hakero, a blue-haired man clad in menacing black armor over a gray cloak. The clashing weapons sent shockwaves rippling through the surroundings, throwing uprooted trees, chunks of earth, and gusts of wind flying backward. Pushed back, Hakero flipped backward to recover swiftly. With incredible speed, he slammed his hands together, forming a spear of black energy crackling with sparks. He hurled it, and midair it shattered into a storm of black wind slashes. Anticipating the assault, Sadahiko formed his signature ram seal. Onmyoten, Hakua no Jutsu, white wall technique. A towering translucent white barrier rose between him and the incoming attack, deflecting the powerful gusts outward in all directions except where Sadahiko stood. The deflected wind tore through the forest, causing explosions as rocks and tree fragments were sent skyward. As the attack subsided, the barrier shattered and Sadahiko leapt forward, clashing swords with Hakero again, each strike triggering further detonations. Hakero found an opening, slicing Sadahiko's chest after deflecting a sword blow, but the figure vanished into smoke, a shadow clone. Onmyoten, Hin Agura no Jutsu, Ice Flame Blue Wave, a voice declared. Sadahiko drew a deep breath and expelled a massive blue fireball. Hakero blocked it with his dual scythes enhanced with black chakra, standing unfazed by the resulting blast that carved a giant crater beneath them. Landing, Sadahiko formed another ram seal. Onmyoten, Josho Mashu no Jutsu, Rising Demon Hands technique. Pale giant arms erupted from the earth, reaching for Hakero. The agile opponent dodged each grasp skillfully, then vaulted high enough to evade their reach. "Don't underestimate me," Hakero shouted, raising his glowing scythes and swinging them to unleash twin waves of black energy, each as large as a mountain. The energy waves cleaved through the giant hands effortlessly, speeding toward Sadahiko. He dodged the first, which detonated behind him, then swung his broadsword to absorb the second, his blade glowing faintly yellow, a detail not lost on Hakero. "Damn," the blue-haired man cursed. "That's yours, Hakero," Sadahiko yelled, unleashing a beam of yellow energy from his sword. Hakero raised his hands to form a barrier, ripples of energy shimmering. The collision obliterated both in a burst of smoke. But obscured vision allowed Hakero to raise his left hand, forming a gun gesture and firing multiple black energy beams at Sadahiko. Sadahiko quickly formed the ram seal again, muttering, "Onmyoten, Takamimon no Jutsu, High Heaven Gate technique." A large, thick, white square wall erupted from the ground. He slammed his right hand on it, chanting, "Uzumaki Fuin Jutsu, strengthen." Black lines spread across the wall, glowing and reinforcing the structure. When the beams struck, they were absorbed and redirected explosively across the battlefield, creating massive detonations and sending debris flying, leaving deep craters and jagged earth shards protruding. Sadahiko grinned at his adversary. "You'll need to try harder than that, Hakero, if you want to take me down," the Uzumaki remarked confidently. Hakero returned the grin, bringing his twin scythes together as they merged into a massive demonic scythe. "True, though it's a pity to lose the only one among your kind who actually challenges me. Still, the era of humanity is ending now, whether by my hand or during these times," he shouted, raising his giant weapon. "Come on, Sadahiko, give me your all, hold nothing back or you'll be finished," Hakero yelled as he launched himself into the air. 10 large black and crimson orbs appeared surrounding him, linking to his scythes. Sadahiko growled, gripping his broadsword firmly with his right hand while forming a hand seal with his left, eyes closed. Moments later, black and white markings spread across his face as he activated Sage Mode. Yin-Yang style, akin to Hashirama's Wood-style Sage Mode. "Don't get cocky, Hakero, this will be our final clash, Dadabaru," he shouted, charging forward. "Senpu, Onmyoten, Hashinoken Seishin no Jutsu." Sage Art. Yin-Yang release. Astral sword spirit, chakra enveloped his blade, infused with natural energy, transforming it into a larger sword with a glowing blue edge, extending its reach. When their weapons collided, the impact sent a shockwave miles wide, darkening the sky and slicing through the heavens. Uzushio, the Tenzin, present day, morning, and elderly Sadahiko Uzumaki opened his eyes, awakening from sleep. He found himself in his private study, a spacious room atop the Tenzin. One wall held a door, the entrance to his office. The other opened to a broad balcony overlooking the ocean and part of the nation, Imagine it like Yamamoto's office from Bleach, but with more belongings. Surveying the room, filled with countless pictures, maps, scrolls, and books stacked on shelves, tables, and even the floor, Sadahiko glanced down at his desk, where he'd been reading a notebook about the Rikyu Sennin he had written. Guess I must have dozed off, he thought, closing the book and rising slowly. But why did I dream about that battle? The old Uzumaki wondered, placing the book back on the shelf. That fight happened decades ago. Could it have been Hakiro's words? The era of humanity is ending now, whether by my hand or during these times. The phrase lingered in his mind. As these thoughts swirled, a knock interrupted him. Come in, he said without looking toward the door, instead pulling out another book about a stone named Gale. The door opened and a young woman stepped in. Her red hair, tied in a ponytail, marked her as an Uzumaki. A white headband peeked out beneath her bangs. Her skin was pale, eyes black. She wore a purple and yellow kimono that reached her heels, notably barefoot. Sadahiko-sama, Tashiyu-sama is here to see you. He's waiting in the lounge on the 34th floor, the woman informed him. Sadahiko nodded, returning the book to the shelf as he approached the door. Thanks, Hinoka-chan, I'll head there now. Together, they made their way to the lounge. Minutes later, after taking the chakra seal-enhanced elevator, they arrived at a spacious lounge where Tashiyu sat sipping tea, served by an attendant. Sadahiko noticed he wore a simple blue kimono with the clan crest on the front and likely the back, accented by a purple sash. A katana resting beside his chair, not the usual daimyo regalia. So Tashiyu, don't tell me you've stepped down already. Is that why you're visiting your old man? Sadahiko teased. Tashiyu smirked, catching the tease. I'm not ready to pass the job to Kushina-chan yet. I just prefer something less formal for now. As for why I came, it concerns Naruto-kun. Sadahiko sipped his tea, curious. Is he still having nightmares? He asked. Since Naruto's return to the clan, he'd suffered many nightmares due to his brief time in Konoha. Often, he'd sleep beside his mother for comfort. Despite efforts, the nightmares lasted for 3 months. Though lacking mind-probing techniques like the Yamanaka clan, the Uzumaki's mastery of Fuinjutsu allowed them to use a special seal to read thoughts. It revealed Naruto needed much care to heal from his trauma. No, Naruto-kun has stopped having nightmares recently, though he still sleeps in Kushina-chan's bed. Not that she minds, Tashiyu replied, and Sadahiko nodded. The real problem is Iwa discovering Naruto's existence, and that he is Minato-kun's son. Sadahiko groaned but agreed. I should have eliminated that fool Mew and his student Anoki when I had the chance, sparing their village this enduring grudge. I know we Uzumaki have our grudges, but we don't take it out on kids or ruin lives, he muttered, cursing. Then he looked at his eldest son. Yujin must have uncovered this, Tashiyu nodded. Yes, and he suspects Iwa might inform Kumo, since the current Reikage holds no love for the former Yandame Hokage. Sadahiko scoffed. Like I care what Kumo thinks. After what we did in retaliation for their kidnapping attempt on Kushina-chan, they won't dare act rashly and will likely watch and wait. Tashiyu agreed. True, but with dignitaries from Konoha arriving, the council here and Uzushios are cautious they might try to infiltrate. This surprised Sadahiko. Konoha sending envoys. For what? Do I need to lay the smackdown again? Tashiyu scratched his head, annoyed. Originally, Kushina-chan wanted to invite her Konoha friends to Naruto's 4th birthday next week since she hasn't seen them in ages. But the Konoha Council and Fire Daimyo caught wind, so now representatives from Konoha and the Fire Country, along with her friends and their kids, will attend to discuss renewing the alliance. Tashiyu rose. That's all, father. I should prepare for their arrival and Naruto's birthday. With a bow, he left, escorted by a servant. Well, this should be interesting, Sadahiko said, returning to his studies. Before leaving, he instructed a servant. Tell Hinoka-chan the tower's security needs to be up by next week. I don't want trespassers when I go to the palace. The servant bowed in reply. As Sadahiko turned back, he froze mid-step, eyes wide. Nani, Naruto's birthday's coming. Damn, I need to get him a present. Back in Konoha, Hokage's residence at this moment, the 3rd Hokage, or more accurately, several of his shadow clones, were busy handling paperwork, while the original himself was engrossed in reading his pupil's latest creation, a sly grin playing on his lips. His days of wrestling with the dreaded burden of administrative tasks as a Kage were finally behind him. However, the peaceful moment was abruptly disturbed when Danzo Shimura barged in without warning. Hiruzen had sensed his longtime rival's presence moments before the entrance, so his clones had already vanished, and he had put his book aside. Is there something you require, Danzo? I wish to be included among the envoys scheduled to visit Whirlpool Country next week, Danzo stated in his characteristically flat tone. Hiruzen sighed, already expecting this confrontation eventually. Lifting his gaze toward his old adversary, the third Hokage said, Danzo, you of all people should understand why you were excluded. It was problematic enough deciding so abruptly when we learned that several of Kushina's allies would be heading to Whirlpool Nation. Neither she nor Tashiyu were exactly thrilled, and I don't want to imagine Sadahiko's thoughts on the matter. Sending you would be tantamount to declaring war, since I'm fully aware your sole motivation is Naruto-kun's presence there. Danzo's eye narrowed, and a barely audible growl seemed to rumble from his throat beneath his emotionless mask. He harbors the Kyuubi inside him. He is Konoha's possession, as have been all Kyuubi Jinchuriki since the village's inception. Try saying that to Sadahiko Uzumaki, and see what unfolds, Hiruzen murmured loud enough for Danzo to catch. And on the topic of Jinchuriki, remember that all before and including the current have been Uzumaki. Mito-sama relocated to Konoha out of love for Hashirama-sama, and with her elder brother's blessing, the head of the Uzumaki clan at the time. Kushina-chan came to Konoha because Uzushio faced multiple crises, and it was impossible for Mito-sama to leave given her condition and vulnerability to threats. Kushina didn't return to Uzushio because her homeland was still under strain, and she had developed ties to Konoha and its people. It's obvious that the villagers didn't hold much affection for Naruto-kun, and since his mother still lived, she had the right to keep him. And what of the other four great nations? They each have Jinchuriki of their own, with Takagakure as the only minor village possessing one. What are the chances that, with this shift in power, the four former enemies will try to exploit Konoha's weakness, or that Takagakure will attempt to claim our status? Your refusal to confront Whirlpool Nation has left Konoha dangerously exposed, Danzo pressed, aiming to manipulate Hiruzen's sense of duty to authorize a mission to retrieve Naruto. As Hokage, it is your responsibility to. Danzo's sentence was cut short as a surge of chakra and lethal intent radiated from Hiruzen himself, shaking the room. Despite his long career as a shinobi and master at masking emotions, Danzo instinctively recoiled, his skin paling noticeably. Don't you dare tell me how to fulfill my duty, Danzo, Hiruzen bellowed, as a shadowy, ominous silhouette materialized behind him. The apparition glared fiercely at Danzo, judging him. Yet it was Hiruzen's eyes that seized Danzo's attention. Gone was the warm, gentle grandfatherly gaze. In its place burned an intense, fiery blaze capable of reducing armies to ash. Danzo realized he faced the professor, a figure capable of instilling terror in even seasoned warriors and unleashing wrath like a tailed beast. Even before Sensei chose me as his heir, I understood the responsibilities of the Hokage, Hiruzen began, his deadly aura receding but still present. I have led this village from the end of the First Great Shinobi World War through the Third War. I won't claim to be flawless. Like every Hokage and leader before me, I am human and fallible. The deadly energy dissipated entirely, leaving only faint traces. Danzo's complexion returned to normal, though he ignored it as Hiruzen continued. After Sadahiko-sama's visit, I realized I had let my age excuse the corruption brewing in Konoha. I will correct this before I retire or perish. That means I'll be watching several individuals closely, including you, Danzo. The Hokage fixed his rival with a penetrating stare. He had long suspected Danzo had not disbanded Root as commanded, and learning Kushina was deceived into believing her son was dead left little doubt about who was behind it. Silence engulfed the room as the two old enemies locked eyes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Hiruzen broke the quiet. Your request to join the delegation to Whirlpool Nation is denied. Leave now. Danzo stared a moment longer with his single eye, then departed without a word. He knew pushing further was both pointless and fatal with Hiruzen in this state. Yet I must find a way to plant ears in this Whirlpool meeting without Hiruzen's knowledge, he mused, plans forming rapidly. In the Whirlpool Daimyo's palace, 1 week later, almost 4-year-old Naruto Uzumaki was slowly waking from sleep. His chamber was spacious, with a twin bed situated centrally on the right wall. His covers were yellow, adorned with fishes of various shapes and hues. The room's walls were painted a warm orange, decorated with patterns of baby animals. Shelves lined with children's books and toys suitable for a boy his age filled the space. A small couch and boxes brimming with playthings sat nearby. A chair sat by the bed, where Naruto's mother would often hold him and read stories. A closet occupied the left corner, stocked with clothes for the young boy. Two windows on the wall next to the bed framed the bright morning in Whirlpool Country. Naruto's eyelids fluttered open, and the first thing he noticed was his treasured teddy bear, his gift from his first birthday during his brief stay in Konoha. He had possessed it only a year, having received it on his third birthday. The bear was brown with green eyes and paws, nose, and belly in a lighter tan. The third Hokage had once said it belonged to Naruto's mother, a claim Kushina later confirmed. Being his first birthday present, the bear held great sentimental value to Naruto. It was also his most guarded possession in the months that followed. The night after receiving it, he nearly lost it. Late at night, Naruto had fallen asleep clutching the bear tightly, rubbing it against his body. After an unknown interval, he awoke to the strange absence of the soft fur and found himself alone in a small orphanage room, the door slightly ajar, and no teddy bear in sight. Fearing the worst, Naruto peeked out from his room and spotted the orphanage caretaker striding away, clutching the stuffed toy in her hand, occasionally banging it harshly against the wall. Using all the stealth a 3-year-old could muster, Naruto quietly trailed behind the woman, worried that his cherished toy might be destroyed, perhaps thrown into the fireplace. But luck was on the young blonde boy's side. The caretaker was both drunk and exhausted, and after hitting the toy several more times, she tossed it into the kitchen trash bin and headed to bed. Whether that was her true intention or not, Naruto wasn't sure, but he was relieved it was just the trash and not the fireplace. Acting quickly, Naruto snatched his teddy bear from the garbage and hurried back to his room, shutting and locking the door behind him. He jumped onto his bed, pulling the blanket over both himself and the toy, softly crying as he clutched it tightly. Though the bear was battered, the fur tangled and dirty, 3 tears revealing cotton stuffing, and one green eye hanging loosely from its socket, Naruto cared little. He was just grateful it wasn't lost. Fortune smiled again when a kind-hearted young woman, a late teen or early 20-something staff member who didn't harbor irrational resentment toward the young Uzumaki, was on duty the next day. Naruto secretly persuaded her to wash and repair the teddy bear, despite her limited sewing skills. She managed to reattach the eye and stitch the rips well enough so they wouldn't reopen unless violently torn. Naruto was forever thankful to her. For the following months, Naruto never took the teddy bear outside his room, fearing he might lose it again. He also had to hide it carefully inside his room, which he did after discovering a loose wooden board beneath his bed. It was just large enough for the toy and hidden deep under the bed, accessible only to someone of his small size. He wouldn't have been able to retrieve it had the caretaker thrown him out on that fateful day. The toy might have been lost forever if Kushina hadn't visited the matron during her mission to punish those who had mistreated her son. After her conversation with the woman, Kushina checked her son's old room and, following a hunch, moved the bed to find the teddy bear's secret hiding spot. About a week after they returned to Whirlpool Nation, Kushina repaired the toy completely and gave it back to an overjoyed Naruto. Since then, he sleeps with it every night, no longer fearing its loss. A knock on the door pulled Naruto from his thoughts. "Naruto-chan, are you awake, sweetheart?" came a familiar feminine voice outside. Naruto smiled hearing it. "Mommy." "Oof," he exclaimed as he bounced out of bed toward his mother, but tripped over his blanket and tumbled onto the floor with a thud. Hearing the noise, Kushina entered to find Naruto wrapped tightly in the yellow blanket like a mummy, only his eyes and arms visible. But Naruto didn't notice. All he cared about was reaching his mother. She chuckled softly and knelt down to help him. "Be careful, Naruto-chan. You don't want to fall again, especially on the morning of your birthday," she gently warned while freeing him. Though Kushina tried to calm him, a difficult task for one with Uzumaki blood, mentioning his birthday only made Naruto squirm with excitement in her arms. His first real birthday, with cake, presents, friends, everything he'd seen other kids in Konoha enjoy. "Will Hijiji, Uncle Keen, and Uncle Hissen's family be there, Mommy?" he asked as he settled down enough for her to help dress him. Keen Uzumaki, the younger brother of Hissen and Kushina, was the third child and second son of Toshio and Ama Uzumaki. Naruto's uncle. At 15, he was one of Uzashio's top ANBU captains and led the village's elite Iryu special unit. Don't think he got there by family ties. The Uzumaki clan's unwritten rule was that nothing was earned by relation or inheritance, only by hard work, something Keen embodied. A prodigy, though he hated the label, he was regarded almost as highly as Minato Namikaze and Kakashi Hadake. He'd become an S-rank shinobi at 12 and earned the nickname Shinku no Ikidori, Crimson Wrath, by 15 due to his fiery temper and spiky red hair. Keen couldn't attend the party in Konoha as Hissen left him in charge of Uzashio, but he met his nephew during the welcoming celebration. Naruto immediately liked his uncle, who was more relaxed than Hissen and enjoyed harmless pranks. Though now mostly restrained by his duties, Keen still had a playful side. He was also honored to wield the clan's famed broadsword, the Tsurujiha sword wings, marked with unique seals. They're just handling some last-minute things and will be here soon, Kushina explained, as she dressed Naruto in a blue kimono, adorned with the clan's crest on the back. And don't forget Sadahiko Jiji is old. It might take him a while to arrive, she added with a sly grin, making Naruto giggle. Elsewhere in Tenzin, the elder Uzumaki sneezed as he finished inspecting Naruto's gift. "Heh, sounds like someone's talking about me. Hope it doesn't last all day or Hinoka-chan will lock me in the tower," Sadahiko muttered before returning to his task. Near the port of Whirlpool Country, facing Fire Country, on the morning of Naruto's birthday meanwhile, a small convoy of carriages guarded by samurai traveled away from the port toward the palace. Among the guests from Konoha and Fire Country were Kushina Uzumaki's old friends, Mikoto Uchiha and Hitomi Hyuga, with their children Itachi, Sasuke, and Hinata. Also present were Koharu Udatane and Himura Mitokado, Konoha elders and former teammates of Hiruzen, Shikaku Nara, the Jonin commander, Shibaya Burame, head of the Aburame clan whose practical insight was valuable, and Asuma Sarutobi, Hiruzen's son and a member of the Guardian 12 protecting the Fire Daimyo, representing the Fire Nation. Inside the carriage, Hitomi was explaining to Hinata what to expect upon arriving at the Whirlpool Palace and Uzashio. "You see, Hinata-chan, the first Uzukage and Whirlpool's daimyo, Sadahiko Uzumaki, decided the best way to ensure the village and palace coexist was to merge them. With that in mind, Sadahiko designed blueprints himself. He created 3 defensive walls, the outer one surrounding the village like Konoha's, a second wall between the village and palace, mainly around the village's edge, where a circular body of water separated the country from the island holding the palace, serving as the first palace defense line, and a third wall encircling the island itself, protecting the palace as the final defense." "But why would Sadahiko-sama do such a thing, mommy?" Hinata asked, puzzled about why something like that would be done. "I believe it's meant to demonstrate that the leader of the nation and the village head can cooperate. Although they are connected, they might still have their own disagreements, just like all people do," Hitomi explained before adding, "Also, this way the 2 authorities of the nation can be in the same place and support each other. Even though you're still young, Hinata-chan, it's important to remember that each nation and its villages have different customs." Hinata simply nodded, then gazed out the carriage window, noticing they were approaching one of Uzashio's gates. Upon passing through, she was struck by the village's charm and couldn't help admiring Uzashio's beauty. While its buildings resembled Konoha's in style, there were clear distinctions. For instance, unlike Konoha, Uzashio had fewer trees, though some were scattered in each block. Additionally, the village had numerous small rivers flowing toward the sea or the watery barrier that separated it from the palace. Every river had bridges spanning across them. Most rivers were concentrated around the village's public park and tended to merge into larger waterways heading toward the village center, where Hinata's eyes caught sight of what was likely the Uzukage's tower. It resembled the Hokage Tower, but was surrounded by 4 pillars on each corner, and had a large umbrella-like roof covering, possibly retractable to shield against rain. The Uzukage's tower was also encircled by a narrow moat with miniature whirlpools. While the village's buildings were similar in design to those in Konoha, notable differences existed. None of the buildings were built next to or attached to trees. Instead, most of Uzashio's structures were primarily constructed from stone and metal, unlike Konoha's mix of wood, stone, and metal. Many of the buildings appeared more futuristic, with some of the more elegant ones featuring multiple floors supported by pillars, with stairways either visible on the exterior or concealed behind walls. The building's colors mainly ranged from orange, blue, gray, red, and yellow, with a few in other shades that didn't stand out much. Two other features stood out: the pillars near the rivers and a distant statue. Along both sides of every river, spaced about a block apart, stood tall orange pillars engraved with the Uzumaki clan emblem, connected by metal fences to prevent people from accidentally falling into the water. Opposite the Uzukage Tower was a large mountain, as tall as the wall it rested upon. Hitomi called it the Mountain of Legacies. It was reminiscent of the Hokage Monument, with large carved faces of the past and present Uzukage adorning its peak, visible to the entire village. Hisen's face was there as well, alongside those of his predecessors. His uncle Jakuna Uzumaki, the third Uzukage; before him, Hisen's father Toshio Uzumaki, the second Uzukage, who assumed the role after his father Sadahiko Uzumaki stepped down as the first Uzukage to travel the world and eventually settle in Tenzin. This meant Toshio became the daimyo, while Jakuna took on the position of third Uzukage. Later, Jakuna retired near the end of the Third Shinobi War, appointing Hisen as his successor. According to Hinata's mother, unlike the Hokage Monument, the reason this formation was called the Mountain of Legacies was because at its base there stood a well-crafted memorial site. This honored not only famous Uzushio shinobi, but many others who had sacrificed their lives for the village, their homeland, and loved ones. Sadahiko had ordered this memorial built after the First Great Shinobi War to commemorate and honor the men and women who had died defending their nation, providing a place for their families to pay respects. Hinata's thoughts were interrupted when the carriage abruptly stopped. She assumed they had arrived because the door opened, revealing a figure she believed to be a guard, as her mother had said the Whirlpool Daimyo's guards wore red haori over their armor. The guards formed two lines with a pathway between them for the guests to pass. A man stood in the center. He wore the same uniform as the Koihei soldiers, but his haori lacked sleeves, and the jacket beneath revealed his muscular dark-skinned arms. His hands were wrapped in white bandages and covered with fingerless black gloves. A silver visor shielded his eyes, and his black dreadlocks extended past his neck. At his waist, secured by a white belt holding his haori, was a sword with a teardrop-shaped guard and an orange-wrapped handle. "Greetings," he said to the Konoha group in a deep, authoritative voice. "I am Kanim Jinran, leader of the Koihei Ninth Squad. I have been assigned to escort you to the throne room, where his lordship and family await. Please do not stray from the path until we arrive, as doing so will force us to detain you." He then turned, some men following him while the others moved only once the Konoha group advanced, placing the visitors in the center. During the walk, the adults mostly looked forward but occasionally glanced around, taking in the palace's design. Sasuke and Hinata, driven by youthful curiosity, craned their necks in all directions with fascination. Even Itachi Uchiha, Sasuke's stoic older brother, occasionally showed interest. After several minutes, they reached their destination. The massive red throne room doors were adorned with various seals, likely for security. Two large statues flanked the doors, each with hands extended toward the center where the doors met, their hands touching and seemingly holding an orb, but nothing compared to the throne room itself. Upon entering, the Konoha group gasped in wonder. The room was spacious enough to hold a small clan. Around its edges stood pillars decorated not only with the Uzumaki crest, but also carvings depicting people engaged in various activities. Guards stood silently before each pillar, swords sheathed and spears held in their right hands. If they noticed the newcomers, they gave no sign. Stained glass windows told stories through their colorful images. Banners of various colors with different symbols hung near the ceiling, not only featuring the Uzumaki clan mark. On the wall opposite stood a massive painting of a man wearing a cloak, arms spread wide and legs crossed. He held a monk's staff in his right hand and a katana in the left. Around him were 6 black and red dots. His long, spiky white hair and the 2 horns on his forehead marked him as Hamura Otsutsuki, the clan's revered grandfather. Above him was a slightly smaller figure with spiky red hair down to his shoulders. This was Murugan, the founder of the Uzumaki clan and one of Hamura's sons. He wore a similar cloak, wielding a sword and staff, with a large scroll strapped to his back. Surrounding these two figures were smaller depictions of people arranged in rows. In front of the wall were several elaborate chairs suitable for royalty. The central chair rested on a small platform with 3 steps. Sitting on it was Toshio Uzumaki, the whirlpool daimyo. To his left, on a lower platform, was his wife Amma Uzumaki, and to his right, his daughter and heir Kushina Uzumaki, with her son Naruto sitting on her lap. Standing next to Toshio's right side, between him and his wife, was their son Hisan Uzumaki. Toshio's younger brother and head of the Koihei, Jakuna Uzumaki, stood at the far left beside his sister-in-law Amai. As the Konoha group approached and bowed before the daimyo, Toshio rose and proclaimed in a strong voice, "Welcome, visitors. As the daimyo of the Whirlpool country, I, Toshio Uzumaki, welcome you all." Whirlpool Palace. About 2 hours after arriving at the palace, Toshio arranged for several attendants to guide the Konoha guests to their assigned rooms. Hayashi's family was given a suite separated by a divider, with a bed on each side, a larger one reserved for the parents, and similarly arranged for Mikoto and her sons, although they had 3 beds separated by a partition. The remaining guests each received individual rooms, smaller in size since they were intended for 1 or 2 occupants. Before the attendants left, Toshio reminded the group that Koihei and Uzunin would be their escorts throughout their stay within the palace. Additionally, anyone wishing to leave the palace or explore the village would need his approval first. This notice seemed particularly aimed at the 2 elders, as Toshio did not fully trust them. Since the festivities wouldn't commence until dinner later, all the guests, except for the elders, gathered in one of the lounges with access to the outdoor garden. Kushina, Nari, Mikoto, and Hitomi, the latter holding her sleeping second child Hanabi, were seated on a bench in the garden catching up. Shikaku had chosen to recline on a shaded chair, taking a nap, typical of a Nara. Shibai admired the local wildlife, keeping watch for any intriguing insect specimens. Hayashi conversed with Asuma and Hisan, who had just arrived with his family, discussing various matters related to their respective nations and villages. Meanwhile, the children played with Keen, who had come along with Hisan's family. Hinata and Karin watched as Naruto, Sasuke, and somehow dragged into it, Itachi wrestled playfully with Keen. Keen was about the same age as Asuma, Kakashi, Kurenai, and Guy, recently stepping into his 20s. His skin tone was similar to that of his older siblings, but with a bit more tan. Like his brother Hisan, Keen's red hair was spiky but shorter, styled somewhat like Naruto's, except he sported a small ponytail down the back of his neck and a single bang falling over his face. His eyes were a deep purple, nearly black. He wasn't wearing his Iryu Anbu outfit today. Instead, he chose a casual look. An unzipped long-sleeve black jacket layered over a black shirt adorned with a blue clan emblem, black fingerless gloves, dark green pants, and blue sandals. A black bandana-style shinobi headband covered his forehead, bearing the village symbol on its metal plate. "You know, Kushina-chan, there's something that's been on my mind," Mikoto said to her friend, who was now out of her formal princess attire and wearing a simple red kimono trimmed with blue. "If Hisan-san is older than you, how come you became Toshio-sama's heir?" the Uchiha woman asked. Niasen never really thought he had what it took to be daimyo and preferred to stay on as Uzukage, planning to retire once he found a worthy successor, Kushina explained, glancing briefly at the children. Plus, given his reputation, and being the strongest shinobi in Uzushio apart from father and Jiji, though they're no longer registered as shinobi, it made more sense for Hisan to remain Uzukage rather than become daimyo. "So I was picked to succeed my father. Also, father believed I had more patience and a better grasp of politics than my brothers," Kushina added proudly, puffing out her chest. Her friend gave a nervous laugh at that. Kushina-chan, I'm not sure about politics but patience. Really, you're the most impatient person I know," Hitomi teased, causing Mikoto to giggle while Kushina gave them a mock glare. "I have to back them up, Kushina. Honestly, I think Hisan-kun has more patience than the whole clan combined," Nari chimed in with her opinion. "While I admit Hisan Niasen is more level-headed than the rest of the family, he's a demon when angry," Kushina said, shuddering as she spoke to her friends and sister-in-law. "I remember as kids, it was almost impossible for me or Keen to best Hisan when he was mad or even calm. And whenever he lost his temper, only our parents and Jiji could calm him down then and even now." Just then, Keen approached the mothers with Karin, Hinata, and Itachi trailing behind, while Sasuke and Naruto were still held under his arms, their backs facing the women. "Hey sis, I'm heading over to Tenzin to check on Grandpa. Mind if I bring the little ones along?" Kushina looked at the kids, noticing the eager expression on Karin and Naruto's faces, who had been set down alongside Sasuke, and the curious looks from Keen and Hinata. Even Itachi seemed interested. Sighing, Kushina said, "I'm fine with it, just make sure you behave, Naruto-kun." Her son nodded excitedly. "You too, Karin-chan," Nari added, her daughter shaking her head in agreement. Mikoto and Hitomi also gave their approval, after reminding their children to behave. Keen then led the kids out but paused when Kushina asked, "Hey Keen, do you know where Tusan and Kasan went?" "I think they headed to the meeting room," Keen answered. "Something about those two old geezers wanting to talk with them about Tsunade." With that, he hurried off to catch up with the children. Whirlpool Daimyo Palace, Council Chamber. "I would have preferred waiting for Tsunade-chan's arrival since this matter concerns her," Toshiyu told the two elders while his wife sat beside him. Hamaru and Koharu sat opposite the Whirlpool Daimyo, their expressions unreadable. "We felt it best to discuss this in Tsunade's absence, considering her predictable reaction and the risk that things might escalate quickly," Koharu explained, alluding to Tsunade's fiery temper and formidable strength. Both Toshiyu and Amai understood the implication, but Toshiyu replied calmly, "You know I'm stronger than her, right? I can keep her composed." The two elders exchanged glances before turning their attention back to Toshiyu. "Indeed, Toshiyu-sama, we have not forgotten your mastery of Shintai God Body." Because the Uzumaki clan enjoyed long lifespans, exceptional vitality, and life force, they harnessed this in a technique developed over 900 years ago called Shintai. This technique channels chakra directly into their bloodstream. For anyone outside the clan, this would be fatal, causing blood cells to burst. But for the Uzumaki, it dramatically enhanced both their offensive and defensive physical capabilities. A sword strike to the neck might leave no mark or only a shallow wound. Skilled users can direct Shintai throughout their entire bodies. Novices control it in specific areas. Additionally, the chakra flow boosts their already extraordinary healing and helps eliminate foreign invaders such as poisons, or even repels the Hyuga clan's gentle fist. Shintai gave rise to the clan's signature fighting style called Hado wave motion, which boosts physical power and enables shockwave attacks at melee and ranged distances. The only downside is the inability to use ninjutsu simultaneously, since ninjutsu requires expelling chakra externally, which risks damaging the body if mixed with chakra flowing through the bloodstream. On the upside, the clan can imbue their weapons with Shintai's chakra flow to enhance weapon effectiveness. Some masters even merge their elemental affinities with Shintai, effectively creating a form of ninteijutsu. A distinguished figure was none other than Toshiyu Uzumaki. While his younger sibling, Jakuna, excelled in channeling his weapons, like his twin Dao swords, and utilizing his cloak techniques combined with his unique shadow shunshin, the origin of his nickname, Shinku no Bore, Toshiyu mastered the use of his innate fire chakra alongside his Hado arts. Together with the fact that Toshiyu possessed the most powerful Shintai ever recorded in the clan's history, he earned the title Akakazi no Tesshin. His extraordinary Shintai combined with his Hado wind chakra and the ability to solidify air, inflicted severe damage not only to his enemies, but also to the surrounding environment. This was demonstrated when Toshiyu took the life of the third Reikage, a man known for his legendary durability and called Seikyo no Tate, in retaliation for Kumigakure's attempt to abduct Toshiyu's daughter, Kushina, back when she was a freshly minted genin in Konoha. Naturally, Kumigakure bore a grudge against Uzushio for the third Reikage's death, and when Sadahiko responded by assassinating the Lightning Daimyo, who had conspired in the kidnapping plan, and also eliminated the Nibai's Jinchuriki at the time, tensions escalated. However, neither Sadahiko nor Toshiyu cared much, since they believed Kumigakure brought the conflict on themselves by targeting their family. "Anyway, back on topic. You mentioned Tsunade-chan," Amai said, eager to wrap up the conversation and return to preparing Naruto's birthday festivities. Hamaru adjusted his glasses before responding. "Yes, recent developments have led the Konoha Council and the Fire Daimyo to select several candidates for the position of Godame Hokage. Among them is Tsunade Senju, so if the situation calls for it, whether Hiruzen retires or worse, she will be compelled to return to Konoha and assume her mentor's responsibilities. Tashiyu raised an eyebrow. While I understand Hiruzen's choice, let me remind you that Tsunade-chan left Konoha, so she is not obligated to follow the Hokage's commands. Not exactly, Koharu replied. She was granted permission to reside here due to her status as one of the Sannin, which allows her to travel the country freely, plus the fact that she carries a third of Uzumaki blood, provided she doesn't disclose any Konoha secrets. Taking possession of the Senju clan's belongings is within her rights as the current clan head and sole known member. However, she cannot simply resign from being a Konoha shinobi. If summoned to serve the village, she must comply, including stepping up as Godame Hokage. The woman concluded. Tashiyu frowned but expected this stance. It was true that Tsunade had mostly been helping sporadically at Uzushio's hospital, but she and Shizune had been living at the Tenzin as tenants, meaning no gambling unless she wanted Sadahiko's wrath, who was determined to kick that habit she inherited from her grandfather. Despite his empathy, Hiruzen recognized that losing a medic of Tsunade's caliber was unacceptable. Her healing prowess was unmatched except by Hashirama Senju, who could perform medical jutsu without hand signs. Though you raise valid points, you know there's little chance she'll agree, Amai added her perspective. If she refuses the summons, she will be branded a missing nin, even while residing in Whirlpool Country, Koharu said firmly. What? You'd go to such extremes just to bring back one shinobi? Amai exclaimed, until Tashiyu placed a hand on her shoulder to soothe her. The daimyo then gazed at the two elders. I suggest we wait for Tsunade-chan's arrival. I'm sure she won't appreciate decisions being made without her input. While I agree she must answer the call, at least she should be here to hear it. Koharu and Hamaru whispered to each other before turning back to Tashiyu. That's a reasonable request, Hamaru said. But it will be you two who deliver the news to her, Tashiyu added with a slight grin, noticing the elder's discomfort. With Keen's group, the Tenzin, well, here it is. Keen announced as the visitors from Konoha stood with mouths agape and eyes wide in awe. The Tenzin was situated in one of Uzushio's more secluded areas, consisting mainly of a massive tower towering over 500 feet, encircled by a huge round stone wall roughly 2.5 miles from the tower. Inside the walls lay fields dotted with trees, bushes, and other flora. The walls featured a single entrance and were covered in numerous seals, though only about half as tall as those protecting the village itself. It's so huge, Sasuke exclaimed, staring up at the tower. Hinata appeared somewhat intimidated and stayed behind her protector, Ko Hyuga, who accompanied them at Hayashi's request. Itachi's eyes were slightly wider but showed no other reaction. To Ko and Itachi, the tower's size was reminiscent of the Kyuubi's might from 4 years prior, which they remembered well. Yep. Along with the Uzukage residence and the daimyo's palace, it's among the most heavily guarded sites in the nation, with countless personnel, seals, and barriers around it and the wall, Keen said with a smirk as he observed the stunned Konoha guests. Deciding they had stared long enough, Keen led them forward, Naruto and Karin close behind, with the others trailing slowly. After briefly verifying their identities with the gate guards, the group proceeded along the only road to the tower's main door, reached by a long ascending staircase. Upon arrival, Keen rang the doorbell several times, producing a deep chime. Moments later, Sadahiko's voice came through the speaker. Hello. Hey Gigi, it's me, Keen said casually. I've brought Naruto and Karin, along with some visitors from Konoha. Silence followed, then Sadahiko asked, It isn't those two brats, Koharu and Hamaru, is it? The Konoha group exchanged nervous glances at that. He called the elders brats, they thought. Yet it made sense. Sadahiko was centuries old, while the elders and the third Hokage were in their 60s. That made Hiruzen, Koharu, Hamaru, and Danzo mere children to Sadahiko, though it was still strange to grasp. Their thoughts were interrupted, as the large door slowly opened, after Keen assured Sadahiko that Koharu and Hamaru were not part of the group, allowing their entry. An hour later, after some introductions, the group split to explore permitted areas of the tower, shadowed by Uzumaki ANBU operatives. They were informed that Tsunade had already departed toward the palace and must have passed by, disappointing Naruto and Karin. Fortunately, Eugen's presence compensated, the 1,000-year-old being entertained guests with his molecular manipulation abilities, inflating his head like a balloon, amusing the children. Naruto, Sasuke, and Karin played tag under Hinoka's watchful gaze, while Hinata strolled the garden with Ko, and several hidden ANBU accompanying her. Keen decided to nap, having nothing better to do. Meanwhile, Sadahiko discovered Itachi immersed in one of the many tower libraries, reading volume after volume. Fascinating, Sadahiko thought quietly as he observed the young Uchiha without interrupting him. It was rare for Sadahiko to witness Uchiha showing interest in anything beyond their clan affairs or matters that would grant them an edge in battle, since they often isolated themselves due to their intense emotions. Sadahiko understood that the Uchiha placed great importance on love, even more than the Senju clan did, as those feelings influenced the activation of the Sharingan and Mangekyo Sharingan. This knowledge had come to him long ago through his research and personal interactions with members of the Uchiha clan, particularly Madara. Madara's deep affection for his brothers and clan was the main reason he despised the Senju, Hashirama, and Konoha. The loss of his siblings and the distrust from his own clan drove Madara down a dark path. Still, Sadahiko found it intriguing that Itachi seemed more drawn to things outside his clan and did not appear to be bound by the curse of hatred. Only a handful of Uchiha in history had resisted that curse, and Itachi seemed to be one of them. As for Itachi himself, he was captivated by what he was reading. Unlike many of his kin, he had always been curious about the history of his home village, Konoha, and not limited solely to the traditions of his clan. He was especially intrigued by Konoha's sister village, Uzushio, after hearing of their great respect for knowledge. The fact that Sadahiko Uzumaki, a figure who had lived before the formation of the villages, was still alive and had gathered much wisdom during his travels fascinated him. When his mother mentioned they would be traveling to Whirlpool Country with Sasuke, Itachi's excitement was evident, though he concealed it well. His desire for knowledge was not for power but to understand the world and aid his life, rather than be confined by Uchiha customs. At that moment, Itachi was reading about the Sage of Six Paths and Hamura Otsutsuki, how they saved the world from the Jubai, the original tailed beast, and taught the people about chakra. They introduced ninshu, which was later distorted into ninjutsu, shaping the shinobi world. The text also described how the sage and his wife had two sons, each inheriting aspects of his power. This caught Itachi's attention since he knew the eldest son became the progenitor of the Uchiha clan. Indra, the oldest, inherited his father's powerful eyes, vast chakra, and spiritual energy. The middle son, Asura, ancestor of the Senju clan, took after the sage's body, vitality, and physical strength. Hamura's lineage was similar. His eldest, Murugan, inherited immense chakra reserves, mental energy, physical strength, and life force, along with unique chakra natures and shape manipulation. The youngest, Surya, founder of the Hyuga clan, received his father's eyes and gained superior visual perception, physical and spiritual energy, perfect chakra control, and heightened instincts. Murugan's bloodline passed down high chakra reserves and enhanced mental faculties, allowing the Uzumaki clan to excel both in daily life and combat. Their creative minds birthed numerous seals in Fuinjutsu, which earned them both fear and renown. Nissen, a voice called out suddenly. Startled from his reading, Itachi looked up to see his younger brother Sasuke burst into the library. "Come on, you've got to see the rest of this place, Nissen," Sasuke exclaimed eagerly, grabbing Itachi's arm and pulling him along without waiting for an answer. The movement was so quick that Itachi left behind his backpack, which he had brought to Whirlpool Nation. Neither brother noticed Sadahiko's quiet presence nearby. He had hidden it well, and neither saw him approach the table where Itachi had been seated. Sadahiko glanced at the books Itachi had been studying, then at the young Uchiha's backpack, a thoughtful look settling on his face. Later, about 2 hours afterward, Sadahiko, Keen, Hinoka, Karin, Naruto, Yujin, and the Konoha group headed back to the palace, where they were greeted by loud voices and the sound of objects hitting walls. Tashiyu had informed Tsunade about her status as a Konoha shinobi, and she was decidedly displeased. Her reaction was a loud rant, requiring Tashiyu's calm intervention to settle her down and promise further discussion later. Afterward, the day progressed smoothly, as the Uzumaki family and guests went down to the village to enjoy the festival held in celebration of Naruto's birthday. Naruto was thrilled. He had never truly celebrated his birthday in Konoha before and was determined to enjoy it fully. During the festival, Naruto quickly became close friends with Hinata and Sasuke, though with Sasuke the bond was more of a friendly rivalry, much like the relationship between their mothers. The only tense moments came when Koharu and Himura watched Naruto closely while Sadahiko was nearby, vigilantly observing the two elders. Occasionally, Sadahiko emitted faint killing intent toward them, signaling his readiness to eliminate them should they threaten his family. At the festival, Naruto met Jinsoku Nishimura, the heir to another Uzashio clan. The boy's energy rivaled Naruto's own, but they got along well. Later that evening, the Uzumaki family and Konoha guests returned to the palace to enjoy birthday cake and other treats, including ramen. Kushina herself had baked the cake, a large, two-tiered confection roughly the size of Naruto, decorated with white icing and blue accents, where the two layers met and on top. Red whirlpool symbols adorned both sides, and atop the second tier, written in red icing, were the words "Happy Birthday Naruto." When Naruto saw the cake, he nearly dove in from excitement, delighted to finally have a birthday cake just for him, and such a delicious-looking one. Luckily, his mother managed to restrain him before he could make a mess. After an hour of eating, with the children, except Itachi and Hinata, playfully fighting over cake leftovers, and the adults engaged in conversation, the moment Naruto had eagerly awaited arrived. The presents. In the main living room sat piles of gifts, mostly from various members of the Uzumaki clan, with others from different clans, residents of Uzashio and Whirlpool Country, and a small number from Konoha visitors. Another large pile, presumably from Amai, Kushina, or both, was set aside. Everyone was present except the two Konoha elders, though no one seemed concerned. The ANBU guarding them reported they were still under surveillance. Naruto's first priority was a gift from Sadahiko Hijiji. The little boy cried out as the elder walked into the room carrying a scroll nearly as tall as a person. Behind him was Yujin, who had just returned after securing the Tenzin. "All right, Naruto, since I know you're eager, I'll skip the boring speech and get right to the gift," Sadahiko said, placing the scroll on the floor and unfurling it. The scroll displayed a large circular ceiling matrix at its center, surrounded by several smaller matrices converging inward. On both sides of the big circle were two smaller whirlpool-shaped circles facing Sadahiko. "Okay, Naruto, step inside the large circle and remain perfectly still," the elder instructed. Naruto nodded and obeyed, though staying still was difficult for the energetic 4-year-old. Once he settled, Sadahiko performed a swift series of hand seals, then pressed his hands onto the two smaller circles, producing a puff of smoke around Naruto. After a minute, the smoke cleared to reveal the blonde boy, except now his hair was no longer yellow but dark red, his spiky locks transformed. "Well, Naruto, what do you think? You always wanted red hair like the rest of the clan," Sadahiko remarked as Hinoka placed a mirror before the boy. Seeing his new look, Naruto cheered joyfully and hugged his great-grandfather, who smiled softly, happy to see Naruto pleased. Kushina watched the scene with a warm smile, her heart filling with joy at hearing her son's happiness, which eased the emptiness she had felt for 3 long years.